I'm starting. All right, good evening, and thank you for viewing the January 3rd meeting of the Arcata City Council. The City Council meeting is being held as a hybrid meeting with both in-person attendance and teleconference access via Zoom. Number one is the land acknowledgement. The City of Arcata acknowledges that the lands we are located on are the unceded ancestral lands of the Wiyot people. The lands that Arcata rests on is known in the Wiyot language as Gudini, meaning over in the woods or among the redwoods. Past actions by local, state, and federal governments removed the Wiyot and other indigenous peoples from the land and threatened to destroy their cultural practices. The City of Arcata acknowledges the Wiyot community, their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. This acknowledgement seeks to aid in the dismantling the legacy narratives of settler colonialism. If you would like to join me for the flag salute. All right, will the city clerk please call roll?
Mayor Matthews.
Here.
Vice Mayor Stillman. Councilmember Schaefer.
Here.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
Here.
Councilmember White.
Here.
All present.
Okay, if you wish to make a comment during the meeting, either at the 2 open public comment periods or for an individual agenda item, there are 3 ways to do so. If you are here in person, please line up behind the podium when the item you would like to speak on is accepting public comment. If you are logged into Zoom, click raise your hand when it is time for public comment so the item you wish to speak on. If you're on the phone, press *9 on your phone to raise your hand. When it is your turn, you will be prompted to dial *6 on your phone. For each item, we will take in-person public comment first and then move to the online comments. We will not be going back and forth, so if you are wanting to comment, please line up at the podium or raise your electronic hand as soon as public comment is requested for that item. All right, we have no ceremonial matters. We have no reports by the commissions. So we will go on to oral communications. The City Council values your comments. This 15-minute time period allows people to address the council on matters not on the agenda. Please know that, pursuant to the Brown Act, the council cannot discuss or take actions on items that are not listed on the posted agenda. At the end of all oral communications, the council may respond to statements. Supported requests that require council action will be set for a future agenda or referred to staff. Speakers may be limited to 2 minutes. There will also be time for the public to comment specifically on each agenda item here and at the end of the meeting under item 12. Is everything okay? Please make your way to the podium, raise your hand if you're on Zoom, or press *9 if you're calling in by phone and wish to make a comment.
Good evening. Welcome to 2024, everybody. My name is Joanne McGarry. I intend to be an active participant at these meetings throughout the year. It's one of my resolutions, if one has to make one. It's an important one to me. I brought several reading books that I've been looking at. I just want to acknowledge, because you know me sometimes as I refer to myself as McGreta, and I'm just really glad to let everybody know here that Greta Thunberg turns 21 years old today. So happy birthday to a most inspiring human being on the planet, and somebody who really inspires me to participate and speak truth to power. My little Our Town book. If you've never read this play, it's really delightful in many ways, but it just really makes me get down to earth in kind of a folksy way, because Arcata is our town. It's for all of us. I picked up at a library, a free little library, a book I haven't really delved into yet, except read a few stories. It's called Nerve, The Adventures of the Science of Fear. And I think fear is something that's permeating our world right now, for better and worse. And finally, I've been delving into the history of our community, and we have up at Cal Poly an Institute for Altruism and Pro-Social Behavior. Sam and Pearl Oliner were professors up there. Sam was a Polish child during the Holocaust who was rescued by a Polish Catholic family and always found the issue of rescuers important. And I'll be talking more about this at the end of the meeting, but thank you.
Thank you, Joanne.
I'm done, right? Yeah, okay.
Good evening. It's been several months since I've asked the city manager for data for statistics on our traffic situation with our officers. I believe they haven't been enforcing for several years. And that's also some data that's come out from the federal government too, that our police departments across the board after the protests of George Floyd didn't want to do a police enforcement of traffic because of the optics of everything. So unfortunately, we don't have any information yet on that. But I'd also address that why we're seeing an increase in fatalities and injuries from folks that are walking across our streets, that are on bicycles. And it isn't just, Humboldt, which by the way is probably the worst in the state, is what I've read just recently, second worst. But from a national level, our numbers have been increasing for the last 15 years, and they've taken a look at comparison to Europe, Canada, Australia, and there's no increases happening in those other Western countries. So what they're zeroing in on, the factors that are a little bit different here is that, one, of course, we have larger vehicles, but that didn't change, and we have speed limits that are higher. But the two things they're focusing on is smartphones, and basically in Europe, most 75% of the vehicles are automatic, so people driving, they have to use one hand on the stick. Here, it's the opposite. They're manual. So that is an area that we're having serious problems, and I don't know whether we're addressing that here. The second was legalization of marijuana. That was the other thing they pointed out, that we have a lot of people that there's increased in arrests in that area, less on alcohol. So we need to have data if we're going to solve these problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, thank you guys so much for being here and hearing our comments. It means a lot to me that I have this opportunity to address you guys on this very important topic. It's the issue of a ceasefire in Gaza, calling for the hostilities to stop. And this is something that I think a lot of people have testified to you guys about already in the past, that really want you guys to take action on it. We have yet to pass a resolution as an Arcata City. Now, the Arcata City has a long history of passing resolutions about things, that are very topical and very important. And so I hope that you will consider this one. It's brought forward from the Redwood Peace and Justice Center Coalition. The council members have got a copy, but let me just read it out for the record. Whereas the city of Arcata has an important and long-standing history of supporting peace and diplomatic solutions to international conflicts. And whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, oppressed people cannot remain oppressed forever, the yearning for freedom eventually manifests itself. And whereas time is of the essence to halt an unmitigating humanitarian disaster in Palestine, as expressed by the director of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency of Palestine Refugees in the Near East, when he said, Gaza is running out of life. Whereas Israel's blocking of food, water, medicine, and fuel in the Gaza Strip is causing suffering, starvation, and disease that is leading to more deaths. Whereas Israel's continued indiscriminate bombing and shooting of innocent civilians, along with the displacement and destruction of Palestinian homes and its critical infrastructure, is making Gaza uninhabitable. Whereas the atrocity is causing an expansion and escalation of regional war and could ultimately lead to world war, and therefore be it resolved that Arcata formally demands Congress and the U.S. President take urgent action to enact an immediate ceasefire in the Gaza Strip.
All right, we'll take one more commenter and then go to Zoom.
Yes, good evening. I wish everyone a happy and productive new year. I'm going to mention some articles that are on arcata1.com. First, there's an article in the Arcata Ballpark, the entrance alternatives. Arcata has a survey so the public can weigh in, but the problem on the survey, the pictures are too small. On Arcata 1, I've enlarged them and have close-ups of the designs. Two of the designs look like cities all over California. That just leaves one traditional design. I vote for more choices. Two, an article about Miss Nicaragua. She was crowned as Miss Universe. It's become a political issue for the government of Nicaragua because she wore white and light blue, which are the colors of protests in Nicaragua. Three, the orange juice test. What is it and how it relates to the absence of home ownership in the Gateway. Four, a letter from Andrea Tuttle from almost 2 years ago. This is as pertinent today as it was back then. Five, articles about Arcata's vision statement. A list of common themes of successful vision statements from around the world, including the vision should be achievable. Six, could Arcata's Gateway Barrel District be designated to be 100% car-free? I think it could be. Two articles about that. Seven, an article about Margaret Chase Smith, Senator. She was the first woman to run as a presidential nomination of a major political party. She was a strong supporter of education funding, civil rights, how that relates to honesty. And nine, there's a dimension beyond that known to Arcata. It's called the Gateway Zone. It's a journey into a wondrous land of imagination in the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition. We've just crossed over into the Gateway Zone. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Fred. At this time, we're going to go and see if we have any commenters on Zoom.
Looks like we have one. Go ahead, Shannon.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, great. I just signed in right now. I'm just calling. I'm a local mother. I have two children. I'm very affected by what is going on in the Middle East right now. It's absolutely horrific. As a mother, I'm very saddened about the number of child deaths, preventable deaths, newborns, babies, pregnant mothers, women. We're looking at now, they're going to the International Court for Genocide. Israel is, and I've lived in Arcata since 2002, and at Humboldt State is when I first learned about the Palestinian cause and the Palestinian issue at such a great institution as Humboldt State University, now Cal Poly Humboldt. We are at a pivotal point in our time, and I'm just a little bit concerned that Arcata has not enacted a ceasefire resolution yet. I read the one that is offered by the Peace and Justice Center. I think it's amazing. I don't think it goes far enough, but I think it is a good start. I just urge you all, I know most of you are women, mothers, think about the children, think about this point in time in history that we have to take a stand. And yes, it won't change what is happening, but we will be on the right side of history. Thank you.
Thank you, commenter. It looks like we might have time for one more commenter.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm also here to advocate for the ceasefire resolution. And I was, of course, here for the last meeting and the one before that, and was disappointed. And there seemed to be two main reasons that people were opposing it. The first one, I guess, is the old reason that people oppose resolutions about something outside of the community, which is, oh, we've got enough to do here in the community, and we can't be making judgments on international affairs or anything like that. And I think, you know, what I always used to say to people when I was on the council to that was, well, gee, I can ride a bike and chew gum at the same time. You know, it only takes a vote. It takes a vote of expressing our point of view, and that vote takes the voice of each person who is in favor of the resolution and amplifies it tremendously, because it's a city that is making the statement. It's a city that is saying, hey, this has gone on long enough, it's terrible, too many people are dying, we're not going to make judgments on how we got here or any of that. All we're saying is stop fighting and start talking. So that's One of them is, that it is important because it amplifies the voices of people who want peace. The other one has been that, it will be divisive in the community. Well, look at the Gateway project. Look at all kinds of things that are voted on by the council. That's the job of the council, is to vote on things. Some of them are easy and some of them are more difficult. And I believe that all of you up here would like to see a ceasefire, maybe for different reasons, maybe for different intensity of your own views. But I really ask you to consider voting yes, putting this on the agenda and voting for it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that is the end of our 15-minute early oral communication. There will be another opportunity at the end. You'll have 3 minutes at the end for commenting. Now we'll go on to the consent calendar. All matters on the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the City Council and are enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of any of these items. If discussion is required, that item is removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. At the end of the reading of the consent calendar, council members or members of the public can request an item to be removed for separate discussion. Item A, approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of December 14th, 2023. Item B, approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of December 20th, 2023. C, bi-weekly report on disbursements. And D, award an agreement for an amount not to exceed $109,123 to AP Triton LLC to provide a comprehensive community risk assessment and standards of cover development analysis for the Arcata Fire Protection District and authorize the city manager to execute all applicable documents. Would any council member like to remove an item?
Item, I just lost my page. C, is that the disbursements? I'm sorry, yes.
Okay, anybody else? Anybody, members of the public, want to remove an item from the consent calendar? All right, can we get a motion?
Well, therefore, I would move approval of consent calendar minus item C.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Kimberly.
Just quick question on CalCard disbursements, and I'm sure you've answered this before, but I don't know what that is.
The Cal cards are the city's credit cards.
Thank you.
They're issued, through the Cal card system.
Okay.
So, did that answer your question, Kimberly?
Yes, thank you.
So then I would move for adoption. I'll have to pull, you move for adoption. I have to pull it back up on my phone.
I move to adopt the consent calendar and
Item C.
item C.
Second.
All right, we've had a motion from Councilmember White and a second from Councilmember Stillman. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. All right, that's, brings us to old business. And so, the first item of the agenda is to review the revised draft general plan of 2020-45. Can we have a staff report, please, Director Lawyer?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and council members. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation for you tonight, but I do have a couple of points that I wanted to make before kicking it off to the council's discussion. We do have a couple of consultants online as well, so if you have questions that are that they can address better than I can, they'd be happy to assist. Okay. We do have, I wanted to give a little bit of a retrospective. In preparation of the December 12th draft of the general plan that came out at the end of last year, I had the sheer joy of putting the document together in one place at one time. And as I was working on the acknowledgements page, and I was looking back through, one of the things we tried to do was to tie back to the original general plan 2020 with the acknowledgements, because we really did build on the work of that original general plan and the work that those folks did in the community at that time. And so I just wanted to give you a couple of insights into the process and reflect on how they relate to the process of where we got to now, and also to take a little bit of urban legend that I'd learned early in my career that I've since verified, and I wanted to pass it along to you just so you understand the throughput. So the point I brought oh, fantastic. Speaking of urban legends. I'm going to introduce George Williamson to present a little bit here at the beginning. The reason I've asked George to come tonight is because I was putting the acknowledgements page together. I was looking back through all of the times that Plan West Partners had assisted the city with, the original General Plan 2020, the updates in 2008, 2009, comprehensive updates during that time when we made some big changes. And then through competitive proposals, Plan West, competing against firms from all over the state who did this on a regular basis from out of the area, was successful in their bid to take this project on again. And so seeing that, George Williamson, who started Plan West back in the late 90s here in Arcata, this is a fitting bookend, so I wanted to give him a moment to tell you a little bit about his journey and the General Plan 2020.
You have to be at least 50 to be a legend, so I'm not there yet. I'm just an old timer. But David's right. In the fall of 1996, this city made a really significant decision on its future, and that was to prepare the 2020 general plan, and went out on competitive bid. I was working out of the area at the time. I was an employee owner for a large consulting practice, but I had become very interested in the North Coast and planning here. And so when this opportunity came, I jumped on it. I bid the General Plan 2020 project and was successful. And I went to my firm and I said, okay, there's just one little hitch. They want me to move there, and they want everybody all in, and so I wasn't able to negotiate that. So I left the firm. I gave up my employee ownership. I moved to the North Coast, and in November of 1996, I stood right here in front of the then City Council, and I asked to be awarded that General Plan 2020 contract. And Vice Mayor Stillman probably remembers that, if not on the dais. And so I felt kind of alone. I felt kind of out there, and but was successful. And the truth is, I've not felt alone since in this community. This community embraced me. I picked up, moved here, life partner, old canine companion. We came here. We came here for the Arcata General Plan, and the city just came together in a way that I hadn't experienced. I worked on general plans all over the state of California, and I just hadn't experienced this. 4 general plan task forces committees, the general plan, overall general plan, and then 3 specific committees, and they're all acknowledged. I appreciate what David has done and kind of giving you a little short history, and I am going to try to make this short, but tremendous resources, tremendous talent, tremendous expertise. I mean, former mayors like Taya Gast and the Gearharts, Dr. Bob and Mary Gearhart, and just across the board, the expertise that came together in this community starting in the late 1990s to put this plan together. And there had been plan elements. There was a land use element. There was a circulation element. But this went above and beyond. This was all the required elements plus 6 optional elements. And we just dove in, and we spent the next several years working this through. Lots and lots of committee meetings, lots and lots of hours spent in this room itself, but for good outcome. And I was even given an office here in City Hall because I was sole practitioner, and Alice Harris, the then city manager, put me in a hallway because that was pretty much what was available. But I never felt alone there either, because people like Karen and Steve Tyler and who can forget Harold? Harold was in the city manager's office. Every time I was feeling a little alone, or wanted to hide from Alice, I would go into one of the departments, and they were always welcoming. So we put that plan together. It was award-winning. The California chapter of the American Planning Association gave the City of Arcata 2020 General Plan a Small Jurisdiction Comprehensive Planning Award. And it was a great time. Plus, it was a great trip to San Francisco for the award ceremonies, and the late Jim Test, who was on the council at the time, Tom Conlon, Ken Curtis, the city planner at the time. We all went down and acknowledged, and there was a former city planner, Arcata city planner, who was the awards chair, had moved on to another jurisdiction, and he came up to us afterwards and said, I'm just blown away with what the community has done and how you guys have come together, and this is a plan that I couldn't have envisioned when I was there, but good on the city, and and now here we are, just 27 years later, and we're here again tonight, and so we're ready, and I just wanted to close by saying that this is another momentous occasion. This is an opportunity for this council to see the recognition, the involvement, the community dedication that is started back then and continues today. We had 4 committees with 35 members. Now you have 8 committees with and a commission with 55 members. So the community has come together on planning, and while the 2020 plan was good, this one with 9 optional elements and with the involvement is better. And so I want to leave you with that. We have had the opportunity, our firm has had the opportunity to work with you, and we've made it a priority for us. I'm happy to say that Plan West is now has a majority ownership that qualifies it as a woman business enterprise, so we're continuing to evolve just in our planning as well. So thank you for the opportunity, and I would like to see this move forward, get into the program EIR, and continue the good planning that this community knows how to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all your hard work.
Thanks, George. Picking up from there, that General Plan 2020 had, approximately the same kind of effort, same level of effort as we've been putting into this document. And we did start from that award-winning General Plan 2020 to start. As many of you know, the documents are available on the website. You can go back and look at the changes from the 2020 plan. But we've put together in one document all of the final edits incorporated for your review tonight. The new plan does have a couple of new elements. There's a health element that is new to the general plan entirely. And then we have the Gateway Area Plan, which we'll be discussing in another agenda item, which is a new element entirely. We also have a completely revised Parks and Rec element, which was last updated in the early 90s. And so that was, a big accomplishment, and I have to, as long as I have the mic, I have to let the world know that I fulfilled my promise to Julie Neander that I made probably 10 years ago to update the Park and Rec element. And all of this, has, involved, about 6 years of public engagement now. It's involved well over 140, public meetings. I feel really proud of the work that my team has done, that our consultants have done to bring this to you. So with that, I'll transition a little bit and tell you a little bit about the current draft. So this current draft, I want to let you know what it is. It's basically what I'm viewing as the last or second to last draft of the general plan is sort of the goal. That this version is the version that you'll be using over the course of the next couple of months to, review as sort of the final version that was, brought forth. Planning Commission may have a few more recommendations coming forward. You may have what we'll be asking for you, a few recommendations, but this is sort of the penultimate draft. Currently, you can find this document on our website under the general plan website. We've housed both the Gateway Area Plan and the general plan there. And then by the middle to late part of this month, you'll be able to see the form-based code that's associated with the Gateway Area Plan as well on the website. The documents are also printed. We've provided each council member with a printed version, and so you should be able to pick those up if you haven't already. And then printed copies are also available in the Community Development Department. So that's where folks can look at it and read it and review it. And I wanted to let you know how this relates to the EIR, and I'll dig into the EIR in a little bit more detail in a minute. But with the environmental impact review, you have to have a stable project description. And so, if you haven't quite decided what the project is, and the project is changing while you're doing your environmental analysis, courts generally don't look favorably on that. They say that, you didn't have a formal project, so how could you have evaluated the environmental impact? And so this document relates to the EIR, the Environmental Impact Report that we're drafting, in that this is the project description. We've gone through a couple of milestones with the City Council, with the Planning Commission to say, what are the final comments that you're making? And at the Planning Commission's last meeting, we basically were operating under the understanding that whatever changes that we were going to make, the recommendations that we made at that time, were going to be put into this document and move forward as the stable project description. And then lastly, on this point, I want to talk about, can it change? Is there an ability to change this? You have not approved this document yet. It's still a draft. Yes, it can change. So the ways that it can change are, ways that don't have an impact on the environment. Right now, the council's, very interested in how the inclusionary zoning process will work and what the thresholds will be. That hasn't been resolved 100% yet. Resolving that will not translate into an effect on the environment. And so it's safe to make many kinds of changes like that, small policy changes that don't have an effect on the environment without affecting the process that we're going through. If you can also make changes that will have an impact on the environment. If there's a change in the significance of an effect, or there's new mitigation measures that are required to mitigate that effect of a change that you propose to make, that can also be done. It'll mean that we have to start the environmental review process over again, make those amendments to the EIR, to the general plan, and then recirculate. So things can change, but the reason why we've gotten to the point that we've gotten to is because I believe that the public process has, made its course, that we've wound up with a document that, from what I can tell, is the community's vision. So then I want to talk a little bit about what the purpose of tonight is. You've received this document. The recommendation is a little fuzzy, make recommendations as necessary. And part of the reason for that is because, you may look at this document and it's perfectly okay for the council to say that document is perfect, just the way it is, and that's the document that we're going to move forward with. That would be a very fine outcome of tonight's meeting. However, you may have found through, your reading over the course of the last couple of months or since this document came out that there's still a couple of policy areas that you're really interested in digging into. And so, getting that feedback tonight or over the course of the next couple of months as we're working through the environmental review process would be, very helpful to hone that last bit of work that we have to do on this document. This document does reflect the changes that the Planning Commission made at its December 12th meeting. At that meeting, they reviewed all of the policies in the Gateway Area Plan and sorted them into 3 buckets. These policies are no longer relevant, let's delete them. Those types of policies came from policies around community benefits that ultimately were weeded out of the document. So we don't need a policy that reflects community benefit that the Council, the Planning Commission has said we don't need that anymore. The other bucket was, let's keep this in the Gateway Area Plan, and we'll talk about those in the next agenda item. And then the third bucket was based on Council's direction to move some of this policy into the general plan. And so the attachment A to your staff report is that table but it shows all of the decisions that were made in the column on the far left. And so between the track changes versions that you have on the website and this table, you can see all of the changes that occurred relative to the general plan. So we would anticipate that council may identify any of those key areas of interest to continue to focus on over the next few months. Okay, and then lastly, I want to touch base on the EIR. I'll give a really high-level overview and not get into the details. You'll be getting into those details over the course of the next coming months. And I'm describing this now to give you a sense for how that relates to the document that you have before you primarily. So the EIR is primarily a disclosure document. It talks about what the project is, what the environmental impacts are. It evaluates the alternatives, and it talks about what mitigation measures should be used to reduce the impact of that environmental effect. And so, as I'd mentioned before, this document and the form-based code will be the basis for the environmental impact report, and we'll be disclosing those. The draft EIR will, which was, by the way, reviewed by our legal team, will be released for a 45-day comment period, and we anticipate at this point that that'll happen on January 31st, and it'll run through March 18th, slightly more than 45 days, just to account for weekends and whatnot. This will provide the public and the agencies time to evaluate the city's analysis and provide comments, make recommendations for improvements and changes, and then we will take all of that public comment and agency comment. Will be able to produce a final EIR. Now, the final EIR is not a complete rewrite of the draft EIR. It's not like you have a draft and then a final version of the same exact document. The final actually has a different role in the EIR. What the final EIR will do for you is bring forward the folks that have commented on the document, what they commented, and the responses to those comments. And so staff and our consultants will be preparing those, and they'll be based on, case law around CEQA. It'll be based on the CEQA guidelines. And so you'll see a section or a couple sections that deal with that. The other role of the draft EIR is to really identify the, changes or clarifications that need to be made in the draft to either address the comments that came forward or to further clarify things that were already in the draft. And so that process takes a little bit of time. I'm hoping that by May, sometime in May, that we'll have those documents available. Then the Planning Commission, the City Council will start working on, it's okay. Sir. Okay, that will trigger the final hearings that the City Council and the Planning Commission will go through to move towards adoption. The adoption process cannot happen until the EIR is certified. That's the last thing I wanted to make sure that you understood. There's been maybe a little bit of confusion about, when does the document get adopted? We'll be looking at this document, but you won't have an opportunity until after the EIR is certified to then take action on the document itself. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about either the document, the staff report, or anything else that you have questions about this matter. And I recommend you open it for public comment and deliberations.
Okay, so does anybody want to start? Don't all jump at once. Go ahead, Stace.
Do you want us to start with questions or?
Let's start with some questions and comments, and then we'll go out to public comment, and then we'll come back and finalize.
Okay. I feel like, I think the bulk of the emails and contact that I have had have been over the circulation element, like regarding parking, public transportation, and housing and infill. So I'm expecting that we'll probably dive into a conversation on that. So I have notes for that. I actually have kind of a simple question, and it's just regarding the wastewater treatment plant. And so I was wondering, and perhaps it's not, it shouldn't go into this one, but I know that we're working on it now. When it's done, it has like a 50-year life cycle. But I think we've discussed that that will probably be the end of it, and we might need to be looking for a new place for it with sea level rise and such. And so I was just wondering, that's a huge move and change. So when do we start that? And that just, I came across that when I was reading, how we value our marsh system, and, that's an important part. And so I was wondering, well, will that be in the next one? And are we, is that something that we're doing? And, when would we start just looking and having those conversations, because it will be a huge change. So.
We are starting that process now. Now is the time. So that planning will get going in earnest in 2024, but it is part that we are working with the Regional Water Quality Control Board on looking long-term planning post this particular realm of improvements. But yeah, it is anticipated that that treatment plant will stay in that location for at least 50 years, likely 75, but there may be components, and that it won't all sort of retreat at once. There will be elements of treatment that stay in that area for longer than 75 years, but we may be, well, who knows? That planning process will detail that out, and there's a lot of alternatives. But that is starting, and it is something we're already in conversations with the regional board about.
Okay, so then I guess that makes me wonder, is that language, is that appropriate to put in the general plan, or because this has the end date of 45 and we won't even be heading in that direction, does it get left out, or should that be noted that we are starting that process now? That was my question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. We can certainly add that in and recognize that as an implementation measure in the public facilities element of the general plan.
Okay, and if this is the first time I've had the privilege of talking about a general plan, so if it's not appropriate to put that in, I'm fine with it. I'm just, wondering if it is, and if we should I guess just it's a way to let the public know this will be coming.
Yeah, and our current general plan has some language around implementation of a 5-year, sort of analysis. We actually do dry weather calcs that we submit, dry weather calculations of flow of wastewater that we submit to the state every year to determine at least base capacity. But our current general plan has some language, so we can certainly add something to this one.
And
so, I was going to
ask. I think that sort of follows up too with a corporation yard and the relocation of the corporation yard.
Well, and I was going to ask too, I think I know our next big venture is going to be a local coastal plan as well. And that seems something, fitting to also include in that, as we're talking about sea level rise and how that area is going to be impacted. I have some other questions if that's all on that topic.
Okay, go ahead.
And so just to kind of echo, what Stacy was saying, we get a lot of emails. And just to kind of wrap around this kind of idea that I think I bring up a lot, but this idea of like policy versus code. And so like we have received a lot of emails that are kind of indicating this idea that in these opportunity zones or in these, other neighborhoods that we're looking at for implementation of, putting some of these policies from the gateway citywide, the concern that all of a sudden we're going to have 5, 6, 7-story buildings in Westwood and Sunnybrae and Bayview, Sunset, et cetera. But I'm hard pressed to find anywhere in the general plan besides the gateway area plan that talks about building height. And so I guess my general kind of question and musing is, and kind of dialing in on the zones too, because I hear a lot of people also talking about Sunnybrae, but it seems to me in the general plan, these main opportunity zones include the Craftsman area, the Gateway, Valley West, and downtown. And so, I'm just kind of thinking like, it's not really translatable, right? Because the gateway policies have this map in these different areas and the hub and the neighborhood. And so that doesn't really translate to these other opportunity zones or these other areas. And so just kind of for my own understanding and for the community's understanding, are people mixing this up with, these commercial centers that we were talking about being able to rezone to some mixed use or whatever that is? And how, when is that figured out? And is that something that is, going to be a separate discussion within code when we talk about building code and form-based code for these areas, as opposed to this policy that we're looking at, moving forward on the EIR with?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I do think that there's been some confusion in the community about what it means to move the policies from the gateway area into the general plan. And You're exactly right, that the codes would allow for those higher densities, and those codes have not been developed yet. And at this point, the areas that you've identified are really the only areas where we're talking about increasing density, so there would be, larger buildings. It's not appropriate to put larger buildings all over our city. That isn't how you see any cities built, and that's certainly not what we're proposing. In fact, one of the changes that the Planning Commission has now recommended in the planning process is to change the underlying zoning to commercial mixed use, so that the policies that apply to those commercial mixed use that you might see applied in the gateway area could be applied if the council chooses to in different areas where these commercial mixed use areas are, but they would not be applied writ large just because we've moved policies into. It's optional at this point, depending on what those codes are that are adopted in those specific areas. Oh, yes, the city manager is just reminding me to say that those codes are not part of this work. We're not discussing that at this point. If we win the HUD Pro Housing Grant, we will be discussing them then.
Councilmember Schaefer, do you have anything else?
That's good to get us started. That's
All right. Go.
Well, I just wanted to say one thing. Over the years, we've had discussion about various shopping centers like Sunnybrae and Westwood, and how we could actually utilize them in a better way. And so there was, they've changed the name, and we're going to be going to, some of us will go to that conference this year. But one of the times when Julie Fulkerson was on the city council, and she was also chair of that, they came back looking at all the Valley West, Sunnybrae, et cetera, thinking about how you could go up on the buildings that they had, how you could fill in, how you could create a little town center in the middle. And so I know Cash Buja worked on the one for Sunnybrae. And so this isn't new discussion, I would say. This has been going on for a long time about how we could actually intensify our residential within some of these areas, because it's much better for our retail if we have more people living within a certain region or area. So I'm thinking, it takes a long time for these thoughts to come around and to be developed, and we're, slowly but surely we're moving that way in this general planning thought process.
Yeah, I think one of the benefits of moving some of the gateway area plan policies into the general plan is that it does allow for that flexibility. While we haven't done that planning work yet, it sets us up, sets the stage to allow us to do that planning work in these other areas, even if it is some area as small as Sunnybrae. Obviously, Sunnybrae is going to look a lot different than the opportunities that you have in the gateway area, and those would be planned specifically based on what the opportunities are there.
Councilmember White?
So I first wanted to thank George Williamson for all of that background information. I am so proud of the city's past and current accomplishments, and feel like we can definitely make another award-winning general plan again. I'm impressed with the dedication of our planning commission. I feel like our city is extremely fortunate to have folks like our esteemed Dr. Judith Mayer, who I've had the opportunity to take one of her many courses, local government planning, that she taught over at Cal Poly Humboldt. This might not be popular, I'm going to just put it out there. With the GAP draft, or the general plan draft, there have been so many changes, and it happened over the holidays, that so many of our community members, including myself, have not had an opportunity to look at it in depth. I don't think that we should be afraid of updating or amending our general plan. A lot of these policies, close to 90, are being folded into our general plan, and I feel like that we spent 2 years identifying and creating these particular policies for the Gateway Area Plan. And while the City Council did indeed give direction to the Planning Commission to see some of these things, like the safe street circulation element certainly can do well to be in the general plan. I don't think it would be wise of us to just float everything over. Most of us had an opportunity to watch the December 12th meeting, and there was just so much to do, hard work. I commend them having to try to get through this in that one meeting, but I feel like it might have been too much to get through in this one meeting. I really feel that we would behoove us, if we're talking about the EIR, we don't want to misstep. As David pointed out, we would end up having to possibly start over if we don't approach this properly. And so that's my concern, is that if we don't slow down a little bit, and I don't think that it needs to ruin the timelines. I think that we can definitely do another award-winning plan, but, Judith had pointed out that the community benefits, also were created for the Gateway Area Plan, and being that these other infill opportunity zones don't yet have their form-based codes, we probably should wait to add that, and then it can be amended later. Also, she pointed out something called sleeper language, and it's really not good planning. And it certainly could be a disservice to places like Sunny Ray, Valley West Shopping Center, or other areas of opportunity that have been identified, because as pointed out by other council members, they are unique neighborhoods, and it might not translate directly like it would with the Gateway Area Plan that has a neighborhood of its own. And while we should not try to tie language, putting policies that are relevant today, when in fact we have an opportunity to develop even better policies later, and we would be stepping aside from those possible opportunities if we put it in now. Again, I just don't think we should be afraid from amending the general plan later. Also, to develop these form-based codes for other areas. Each zone in the city, as I've already pointed out, is unique and should be provided with those opportunities for that. And I could go on ever, but I think that my council members probably have heard enough from me.
If you have more to say, this is your time.
Well, maybe we'll hear something from the public, and then we can also come back to that. Great.
So I just want to ask you if I understand this correctly. So what we're doing is we're allowing this to go out for the EIR. We're going to have a lot of comments come back. We'll have more comments from the council, more comments from the citizens of Arcata. And when it circles in the EIR, it's going to be going to many agencies, and they will be commenting. Am I correct on this?
Yes.
So what we're doing is we're saying, let's take this and start the EIR process. Let's see all the comments that are going to come in, and then we can look at all those comments and see what we need to do. And that would be well, I guess I shouldn't say what I would say, but I think we should move forward.
And just to add kind of what I've, I guess, learned from this process, and then maybe ask it in a question so David can reaffirm. But I mean, this idea that if we are moving forward on the EIR, that to have a stable project description, we can always go less than that. But if we go more, then that's when we get into the trouble of not having a stable project description. And then we have to re-go through the process. But if we decide, hey, yeah, we don't want to see more than 3 stories in Sunny Bray or Westwood or whatever it is, right? That's always going to be less than what we initially planned for, so.
Yeah, that's correct. And in fact, the EIR is a very large document. It's been in draft for several months. When you see the EIR, the project description as it describes in the EIR itself will, envision the maximum building height in the city of Arcata as 8 stories. We know right now we're working on a recommendation of something less than that. The council can back down and make an approval of something that's a smaller project description, but it can't exceed what it's evaluated in the EIR without recirculating the EIR. That's correct.
I need a point of clarification for myself, because since I can't participate in the gateway decision-making, sometimes it gets a little bit confusing. So I know, like, when the 3 council members did the gateway planning, it was very specific, to the area, and they really discussed a lot of details. So when I'm hearing, gateway policies being folded in. What my understanding is, and that's why I'm asking, is that it's the general concepts are open for discussion in those areas, and then I'm assuming that we would take those 3 or 4 opportunity areas, neighborhoods, and discuss them in detail, like what would that look like building heights and all the things, just as my colleagues did in the gateway plan. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. And to kind of explain the process a little bit further, what the city council, I think, came to in late last year was this idea that many of these policies are good policies and they should apply elsewhere in the city. When you have a policy that applies elsewhere in the city, it doesn't mean it applies everywhere in the city, first off. Some policies, like our creek policies, they only apply in creeks. They don't apply everywhere. They apply in creeks. And so moving those policies into the general plan, because we felt like they were good policies that should apply in other areas, doesn't impinge on areas that they don't apply to, having those policies not apply to them. And it also doesn't impinge on areas that don't yet have triggers for applying those policies that we want to in the future apply those policies from being developed in the future. It's no loss either way. The Planning Commission looked at each and every policy. I understand that each person maybe had a different understanding of what may be most relevant to port in. Planning Commission went through every single policy in the Gateway Area Plan and evaluated each and every one of them and made a decision as a body. And their recommendation as a body is what you see in this document here. And that's not that you shouldn't discuss and think about, well, what did one member say? Or, what's a public member saying that is maybe contrary to that recommendation? You definitely need to take that into consideration. But I wanted to make sure that you all understand that this document is the Planning Commission's recommendation as of December 12th, basically.
Okay, so in general, like if there some of those policies, and maybe you can come up with an example, I'm not at the moment, but if there's a policy that the Planning Commission decided that should be considered in those areas, and it is a gateway one, I think I think that there's fear. People hear gateway and they think it's going to be exactly like the gateway plan. And what I'm assuming is it's a general policy and we will tailor it to that area in a thoughtful manner with the community. And so I just think, because gateway has become a scary word. And so when you tie it to anything, I feel like it's causing fear. And I just want to be clear that I don't see it that way. I see that we're going to have I will have a chance to participate, in looking, helping to look at what those neighborhoods will be like.
I can provide one example off the top of my head, and it goes back to something that you mentioned before, is receiving a lot of communication around parking standards. There were a couple of policies that, specifically the Planning Commission looked at, one very specific around minimums and maximums that they left in the Gateway Area Plan, so I won't discuss that here. But the one that they ported, or is recommending to port, was a very generalized policy that just says, in essence, look to minimize parking requirements where you can then incentivize things such as bike lanes and walkability and other amenities without specific standards that then would be developed in each of those opportunity zones as you move forward. So as one example.
All right, I'm going to say one thing and then I'm going to put it out for public comment. And then we can circle back and talk some more. What I want to say is I don't think we should be afraid. I think that what I love about this document is it is a living document. We have, you're going to release the EIR at the end of January. We have until March to review it. There's plenty of time, maybe too much time, because I think that, I'm seeing Santa Cruz and Chico and all these cities like passing these general plans and doing their part. And I just don't think that we need to get mired down in the minutia. We have good it's a general plan, not a specific plan. So I think that we just need to look at these general policies. We can always tailor them and send it out to the EIR. All right, so We are now going to open it up for public comment. This is public comment that is specifically, I lost my script, specifically related to the general plan. This is specifically related to the general plan.
Okay, are you ready? Are you ready?
Yes. I completely oppose moving forward with this general plan right now, and I warn the council right here and now that if it goes forward as it is, it will likely end up wiping out these last remnants of this ancient ecosystem and jeopardizing the future and hope for our nation, which is depending on these last remnants and for us to properly maintain it. We should not be trying to move forward in a way to be like these other cities when they're trying to be like us. They're trying to get back to nature. And the reason why this gateway plan is scaring people is it's moving more away from nature into these artificial, staged environments instead of moving more back and integrating into it. And going over some key points that some council members have brought up. First off, with the waste management plan or any type of waste system that's established, we need to be modeling our waste management after NASA. They've created a system that can utilize at least 60% of the methane in poop and extract that for renewable energy in the city. We need that system in our management plan. NASA has also developed a system to take out 90% of the water and peat and turn it into hydrogen fuel cells. We need this in our management plan. And if the management plan isn't delivering our community the frontiers of space-age advancements, then it is not bringing our community where we need to be, into the frontiers of space-age advancements specialized in terraformation, something that no one else is looking into right now, but we are the last ones that are truly able to make happen. Another aspect of it is the Gateway project bringing in multiple story buildings. We need to be having and developing eco-villages and eco-cities that integrate the modern advancements of city development into propelling the natural evolutionary development of wild planetary ecosystems, like the old growth ecosystems which we still have access to. That's more than any of these other cities can say. And examples of this is such as integrating tree houses into the redwood trees. Second generation redwood trees go for up to $100,000 to $200,000 top right now. But those same trees can be utilized to create 7 to 10 story treehouse buildings inside of it that can simultaneously be customized for rehabilitating the canopy ecosystem that they're operating in and turning human inhabitants into this region into something beneficial to the environment rather than contradictory to it. If we're going to bring in more people here and build these buildings, it's going to end up having a severe impact on the last remaining remnants of these ecosystems, and it's just going to be bringing in more people that are operating out of balance with these ecosystems. We need to be bringing in bigger populations in ways that's naturally oriented to propel the health and rehabilitation of our old growth ecosystems, something that the management plan of this city takes no prioritization in right now. And as another council member said, we need to be adapting this management plan to the custom local communities of each region. As Americans, the strength of our people is in the strength of our local community. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, and again, I'd like to point out with the general plan from the standpoint of, well, first of all, I didn't realize it was award-winning in 2020, so I had to say congratulations on that. And I've spoken to someone that was involved with that process, which has taken years and years, and I guess a big concern they had was with our latest general plan, there seems to be a lot of red ink going through the whole 2020 plan. So a concern I would have is all these things, if this was an award-winning plan and it was so good, why is there so many things being crossed out on it? And I think a few of us that have been involved with the Planning Commission have seen months and months of this. And I would also say the vagueness of, the concern from the public from all these other neighborhoods that, that they're hearing that possibly they could have a 6-7 story building in their yard next to them. The language there is getting pretty fuzzy, like, you can interpret it, basically we'll consider all these things, but we can basically do whatever we want to. And for somebody who's lived in micro neighborhoods, how these things work out is that you're like a surgeon coming in there to these neighborhoods. There's already commercial strips in there, and then you're adding, some more stories to the buildings. You're not just scattering them and sprinkling them all over all the city. And the way that this has been written, in my opinion, and so a few others, that you could interpret they can do pretty much anything in these neighborhoods. And I don't think it's very democratic to them from the process is if this is kind of where we're going as a city, you realize that there's only a handful of us that really read these documents. The majority of the city is not even aware of these things that are going to happen. So if you're actually going to be going in this direction, you need to get one of those mailers out to everybody and basically state what is happening so they can actually get a response in and later on down the road here, whenever that date is actually going to be. I appreciate what Stacy had to say with the wastewater treatment plant too, because this has been an area that I've been kind of focused on. But I would also, you voted on, the latest, which was this, went up to $65 million, which was water control basically. But just a reminder, you also, the city at that time, the Coastal Commission also put in that they're going to go with phase 2, which is pretty expensive process of beefing up all the levees in that whole area. And I kind of looked into this. Some cities have already moved their plants, and it was a lot less money than what you've already spent with the 65 million, and also what you're going to do with the levee construction. So that's a good point that Stacy brought up, and it should be involved in this process. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, Paul Patino, Arcata. I'm ceding my time to Fred Wise. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Number of things. I'm in favor of getting this forward to the EIR, so don't misunderstand me on that. Council Member Schaefer said we need a discussion. I'm coming to you. I think we need a discussion of the overlay zones and how this works. I think there's large implications on this that we do not know. Mayor Matthews, you mentioned Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz and Los Gatos now have voter referendums on their general plan because there is not sufficient public buy-in. In terms of the stable project description, the question is, what are the population projections? There's some in a small table in the general plan. It shows Cal Poly having 12,000 students by the year 2045. Cal Poly is saying that this could happen in 6 years by 2030. There's a question of whether students are counted as population. If we're looking at an 8,200 population growth by 2045, 6,000 of them are students, 1,000 are support people and teachers at the university. That doesn't leave much for normal citizens, about 1,200 people. This is from the CEQA scoping session 2022. I'd like to see a similar table. This has the percentages of future growth locations. It shows Gateway as 16% of the city, meaning that there'd be lots of growth in other parts of the city. Community Development Director said that he believes the public process has wound its course. I thoroughly disagree. I think there have been hundreds of comments that have had zero response. The agenda says that the Planning Commission recommended to move several, the word is several, policies to the general plan. This is terribly misleading. It's an insult to the public. There were 86 policies moved. Of the policies that were deleted, some policies were deemed not necessary. Many of those I disagree. Other policies were said to be similar to those already in the general plan. Again, there's 5 or 6 that I think are really watered down and need to be looked at. The Planning Commission was said to have used their framework system on December 12th, but the framework involves them doing homework, supplying written comments, the director compiling the comments. That was not done. There was no homework done prior to that meeting, and it was obvious if you watched the meeting, very few commissioners had anything to say. The system that is used is called negative polling. It means it takes 4 commissioners to not vote against something for it to be considered. So if people haven't done their homework and there's no opposition, then everything will pass, essentially. It's a bogus system, especially in these large matters like this. What I just said, I didn't explain very clearly, but if you look at how it actually works in practice, it's very bad. In other words, if one or two or three commissioners don't like something, it passes anyway. The director said that the Planning Commission evaluated each and every policy in the gateway policies and made a recommendation. I cannot think of a more false statement than that. That was not done. I spent weeks looking at those statements, and I don't think the Planning Commissioners did. As Councilmember White pointed, it was done at an odd time of year. It was done very quickly. There's lots of room. Now, this does not affect this going to the EIR. I understand that. This is the work that we'll be doing in the months to come. In terms of the rolling things into the gateway, or to the general plan, I've written to you about this. I have a letter to the editor of the Mad River Union today. There's so much that's unproven about the gateway plan. The gateway plan is an experiment. I'm in favor of it. We have our community benefits program. There's the privately owned, public accessible open space, which has never been talked about. I think is very unlikely to work. Those things can be proven to work or not work and changed and modified over the next few years before this stuff is put into the general plan as a general policies. I want to work on what our goals are. Our goals are affordable housing, homeownership opportunities we've pretty much given up on. I find that unsettling. And true affordable housing, not just small units that are affordable by design, which is a phrase I hate. That's what we're looking for. Whether it's going to work to have the limited parking, we'll find out. But I think we're going to know a lot more in the next few years. And we can apply what we learned, make amendments to the general plan at that time. Thanks.
My name's Joanne McGarry, and the first speaker really spoke to me because we get weighed down and bogged down in minutia sometimes, and sometimes we don't even have a vision, and we don't even have an idea of how we need to live in a thriving, surviving way in this beautiful part of the world, in the redwood forest and the coastal dunes. And if we're talking about, we really need to be exceptional in our community because we live in an exceptional place on the planet. And, all this planning and stuff, I just really want us to really think differently and not just do the cookie cutter, well, every city's doing this and this is what, is happening elsewhere. We don't have to be like everybody else. We can be creative, forward-thinking, experimental in a really organic way, and not kind of destroy something before we realize that it's going to be destroyed and we'll never get it back. So I think one of the other books I pulled out of a shelf recently was Ecotopia by Ernest Callenbach. It was written in the 70s, but it was one of these books that totally influenced me in my life when I was taking things like planning classes at UC Davis back in the 70s, and how he thought forward how a community could kind of get back to the earth as opposed to building over it and neglecting it and destroying it. So I really appreciated the first speaker speaking out about this. So when you are thinking about all these things, think about where we are and what was here before us and what we want to keep thriving here besides a lot more people.
Thank you.
Hello again, Council. Dave Meserve, Arcata. Yeah, I think with the Gateway Plan, what I see happening regarding the general plan is the idea that many of the policies, whether or not they immediately get transferred to other regions of the city, are being kind of set up to be the zoning of other areas of the city. And what I see here is, it made me consider, what does the word zoning mean? And I looked it up, and it means what we think it does probably, which is dividing a city into zones depending on the size of the lots, the size of the houses, the history of it, the shopping area, the geology of it, all sorts of things that define what that neighborhood will be like. And then when people have a neighborhood like that, whether it's the Sunset or Sunny Brae or Westwood, it becomes a neighborhood and also becomes a zone in the planning sense. And what I see here, even if all of the, even if all of the gateway policies don't get transferred to these zones, what's happening is that we're kind of eliminating the neighborhood quality of zoning. And, I know this from living in the, it's now the I Street and Craftsman's Mall neighborhood, because it's separate from the Sunset in plans, and it's been raised from low-density residential to high-density residential. And the plan seems to be to make the city as a whole open to high-density residential. I hope you're right, shaking your head, Meredith. I really do. But that's the trend that I see as I look at the maps. I see lots more high-density residential and not even a lot of mid-density. So anyway, I think it's really important to keep neighborhoods. I think it's really important to let, before changes take place in the zoning in a neighborhood, to let neighborhoods speak out about it. When the zoning was when we were being incorporated into the area with Craftsman's Mall, we weren't even notified if you happened to be south of Grant Avenue. So anyway, I hope you'll consider this and remember the meaning of zoning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, good evening. My name is James Clore. I just wanted to say I think it makes a lot of sense to take the learnings from the Gateway Area Plan and bring them into the general plan. They have spent years in the Planning Commission talking about the Gateway Area Plan. They have done so many community events. I've gone to at least 3 or 4 of them. You see people putting little sticky notes and little tabs on things that they like. And so to leave those behind and not take those learnings seems like a huge disadvantage to the city of Arcata. So I just want to say I support the idea of taking those 87, of which there aren't really 87 because a bunch of them are deletions, from the Gateway Area Plan and then bringing them into the general plan. So thank you guys.
Thank you. Any more public comment in here? Speak now. All right, let's go over to Zoom.
All right, our first speaker is Lisa. Go ahead, Lisa.
Hello, council members. I want to speak to recent changes made to policy OS-1E of the general plan and its appropriate uses and development limitations within open space lands. I sent you a letter with the original language of this policy. The policy itself speaks to the diversity of the resources within the city and their management, including interpretive and recreational use. The following language has been added to the end of this policy. The inclusion of this language allows for development of open space lands, contrary to the original policy. The added language reads, allow for the development of existing vacant and underutilized properties with low natural resource value as a strategy to permanently protect high resource value open space and provide high quality open space. I am strongly opposed to this policy addition. This is a departure from past and current directives and policy to preserve and protect our open space lands by utilizing infill development as opposed to resource land development. We do not have to look too hard to see where the city has taken underutilized and damaged resource lands and transformed them into the treasured jewels of our community that they are. The Arcata Community Forest, once heavily logged and grazed, is now a stellar example of sustainable forest management recognized worldwide. The Arcata Marsh and Wildlife Sanctuary, formerly a garbage dump and now a landmark of this community. One important purpose, a very important purpose of the Gateway Area Plan and the infill policies of the proposed General Plan 2045 is to continue to protect Arcata's natural resource lands. The council confirmed this directive recently. If we begin to pit our natural resource lands against each other for their presumed value at any given moment in time, we departure radically from the community's strong commitment to protect our natural resource and open space lands, both in and outside of our city limits. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next speaker is Glenn. Go ahead, Glenn. Go ahead, Glenn.
Hi, council members.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, bear with me one moment. Sorry, technical difficulties. Here we go. While Cal Poly enrollment went up by 2 to 3%, and the Craftsman's Mall dorms are being built in anticipation of a flood of new students that appear to be very slow in coming, rental vacancy rate in Arcata hovers around 4%, and rent signs are visible on Arcata apartment buildings. The current draft of the general plan includes implementation measures to rezone the Bayview, Northtown, Arcata Heights, and Sunset neighborhoods, allowing mixed uses and denser housing, including 4-story and taller apartment buildings. This is not good zoning. Do you really believe folks living in these neighborhoods want this? If so, put it on a ballot and let the people of Arcata vote for it. As things stand, the implementation measures and planning overlay mechanisms are feeling entirely way too top down. The promises of the Gateway Plan may or may not become a reality, but they're worth a try. Pass the Gateway Plan, see what gets built, and then evaluate the need for other changes. For 2 years, the Gateway Area Plan has been presented to the public, and suddenly the community is being asked to apply those principles to the whole city. Why the rush? Pass the Gateway Plan. Leave the rest of Arcata for later. See what housing is built, whether there are affordable rents, and how limited parking works. See if the community benefits and privately owned public accessible open space programs actually become a reality. If they don't, because of economics, why have them in the general plan? In a few years, if we're happy with the Gateway Area Plan and how it's turned out, we can amend the general plan as required. If we want 5, 6, and 7-story apartments in all neighborhoods over Arcata, we can do that then. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn.
All right, our next speaker is a call-in user. Go ahead, call-in user. Yep, go ahead. Call in user 1 is all it says. Go ahead, you're unmuted.
Good evening.
Yep. Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Good evening, council members and staff. This is Kathleen Stanton, and I'm concerned about allowing overlay zones as staff has recommended to be applicable throughout the city. I believe that allowing buildings that could be 4 stories tall or higher in every single neighborhood and allowing commercial stores everywhere is not good planning for the future of Arcata. I don't believe the policies that are specific to the Gateway area are necessarily applicable citywide. And I addressed that several months ago to the council and you agreed. You directed staff to have the Planning Commission review Gateway policies and see if they would be a good fit in various neighborhoods. And you didn't think a blanket application of all Gateway policies was appropriate throughout the city. It's my understanding that there has been practically no Planning Commission consideration of staff's proposal for a blanket approval of overlay zones throughout the city. I think the blanket application of overlay zones for anywhere in the city is not good zoning because it doesn't respect the different and various aspects of Arcata's neighborhoods that make them special and distinctive. I'd like to share a story with you about the application of an overlay zone in the Bayview neighborhood about 20 years ago to make way for a Kinko's Coffee Center. Kinko's wanted to have their business in the heart of a residential neighborhood about 3 blocks off campus on C Street. The property was eligible for landmark status and therefore an overlay zone would apply. Back then, Kinko's used to be open 24 hours a day and would most certainly be doing business late at night. And there was a neighborhood outcry that this kind of business was inappropriate for a single-family residential neighborhood. Neighbors didn't want additional parking problems and having customers coming and going until all hours of the evening for good reason. The plan was eventually not approved by the city. If, however, you approve this overlay zone policy, then all neighborhoods will be open and vulnerable to the conversion and construction of retail, personal and business services, and other commercial uses that may not be a good fit, along with the construction of tall 5, 6, and 7-story apartment buildings. Please remove these implementation measures from the general plan. Let's see if the experimental gateway plan actually turns out well before deciding that overlay zoning is suitable on a citywide basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen.
All right, our next speaker is Melody. Go ahead, Melody.
Good evening, City Council members. My name is Melody, and I'm a co-director of the Redwood Coalition for Climate and Environmental Responsibility, also known as ROCKR. On behalf of ROCKR, I'd like to express support for the revised general plan. We're facing a climate crisis, and people are struggling to find places to live in our community. It's great that this plan is going to allow for crucial needs of the community to be addressed, including denser, more walkable housing. This density will lead to reduced sprawl and carbon emissions. Additionally, moving certain policies to the general plan is efficient and will allow for more homes and mixed-use development in underutilized parts of the city. It's important that the plan be adopted to address these pressing issues now. Slowing down the adoption of the plan is not a good idea at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Melody.
All right, and our last online speaker is Ray and Adam. Go ahead.
Howdy. In the policy mapping matrix, it's clear to see the hard work the planning staff has put into thoughtful, inclusive, and future-minded policies for the city of Arcata and its residents. From the transportation systems that support a car-free lifestyle and multimodal form of daily commuting to the design elements that would support a new form-based code for the city, the proposed plans are balanced and well-received. I especially want to commend the efforts to include mixed-income neighborhoods and provisions for new home ownership in the proposed code. I do support this implementation of new codes in the general plan as opposed to only segregating new policy in the gateway area. Increasing density across the city will help to ensure we can protect our beautiful slice of this planet here. There are a few minor changes that I would like to propose as alterations to what is outlined in the plan now. This is a little specific, and we do have another commenter, so I'm hoping that we can just kind of roll through these. But CM-5 includes the use of scooters and motor-assisted bicycles in the infrastructure plan to ensure safety measures are in place as motor-assisted or non-vehicular means of transportation continue to grow. This would ensure proper protocols, safety measures, and infrastructure to reduce the number of pedestrians or vehicular accidents. D1A would ask to include provisions for environmentally friendly materials in the quality materials to be able to guide future developments in a carbon neutral or carbon negative direction. D-4A references mid-block passageways. I would ask to consider including specific design requirements to support green alleyways or green street infrastructure as mentioned in GA-7A.6. D-81. Consider a future allocation for a percentage of development costs to go towards public art installation and support for nonprofit or community-run arts programs such as access to workshops, tools, etc., to support the development of and creation of high-quality public art. GA-6F, I would like to include pedestrian-only zoning in the proposed new public open space to support more pedestrian activity, including seasonal street fairs, public outdoor events, and walkable shopping and dining experiences. LU-1R, consider adding provisions following Eureka's planning code for mixed-use zoning, which would allow new development with residential use to increase the maximum height by an additional story in 20% of the building footprint. I would support including, not deleting 5D, which is the incentivized artist housing and cultural spaces as community amenities. Live-work units, deed-restricted low-income housing, and amenities that attract artists such as shared workspaces are invaluable assets.
Thanks, Ray.
for
That's your
community.
time. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Hey, can I get the rest of this?
Sure, go ahead, Adam.
So, hi, everybody. Hi, Fred. Hi, Joanne.
They're invaluable assets for our community.
As a short community, and the existing residents that are experiencing the first wave of displacement as Arcata develops to develop and expand. 9Z, I would also support the inclusion of 9Z to allow for more streamlined development process and increased development intensity for projects that provide enhanced architectural design above the minimum. Beautiful cityscapes are indeed a community benefit, and developers who go above and beyond should be rewarded. This will curtail unsightly and bare minimum designs in places of protections that include beauty as a standard for new building projects. 3F, I think it's pertinent to include 3F, even if similar language exists in the housing element. It is crucial to call for the creation of affordable housing units, including rent-restricted areas, alternative ownership models such as equity housing cooperatives, and deed-restricted owner-occupied housing. Consider adding provisions for small lot lines to better support first-time homebuyers, smart downsizing, and development on lots that are smaller than what is standard for existing residential zones. 11, additionally, and finally, there are some text which include some provisions to incentivize mixed-use developments, LU-1AA, but it would be nice to see specific callouts in the land use selection for tenement-style housing where kitchens and bathrooms are shared between individual living units to provide housing, which does not contribute to as much infrastructure development as traditional housing and individual kitchens and bathrooms. Overall, these policy changes applied to the entire city would reduce speculation concentration in the gateway area and provide opportunities for new, thoughtful development in all areas of Arcata. Again, thank you for providing current and future residents of Arcata with such a forward-thinking approach to city planning. I know oftentimes your work is overlooked and scrutinized by the public, but the penultimate plan is something that should be praised and implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Are there any more comments on Zoom?
Can I ask a question while they're still, Raylene and Adam, would you just maybe mind, it sounded like you guys had a well-reasoned out list, and I saw our staff furiously trying to write some of it down, but if you wouldn't mind emailing that along, that would be helpful. So thank you.
Yeah, we can do that, definitely.
Thank you, Councilwoman Schaefer. That was a good suggestion. All right, do we have any more Zoom? Anybody else on Zoom?
We have one more, it just says iPhone. Go ahead.
Yes, this is Patricia Kumbianica, and I just kind of wanted to give a brief comment. I think, in my opinion, what is good, what is considered good for the neighborhoods within the Gateway Area Plan should be considered good for the rest of the neighborhoods of Arcata. Therefore, the community should make sure that the Gateway Area Plan's infill fits well within the existing neighborhoods, and we should be addressing things as, protection against solar shadings and with setbacks and step backs, and really look at how this infill will fit into our community. And so if it's good for the Gateway Area Plan, or if it will be good for the Gateway Area Plan, it should be great for the rest of Arcata. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Anybody else?
All right, no more online public comment.
All right, Council, is everybody okay if we finish with the Gateway Plan before we take, the general plan before we take a break?
I was going to say the Gateway Plan, do you want us to go in the other room?
Not there yet. All right, so let's bring it back to the council. Does anybody have any comments that you want to make?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of, I don't know, bring some musings and then maybe just bring up some points of things that we could discuss more. But I mean, I think there are things that are not going to affect this document, you know, moving forward with an EIR. I think that we're not going to go more than what's in here. But just reminding, and I know, you know, some of the speakers kind of, you know, alluded to this idea of yeah, going back to the land and acknowledging the important natural elements that surround us. And I think that the status quo is what has really damaged that, and kind of the historical kind of zoning that we see all across our country that is really damaging and horrible for the environment and horrible for people, and has kind of created this car-reliant society that since the 50s we've been building up throughout our entire country. And so obviously we need to do something different. And so just kind of the reminder that we are living in a climate crisis, and it is, you know, pretty proven and well accepted that infill and walkable cities within, you know, it's scary within the current societal structure that we live in, but if we're going to make any, you know, meaningful change and meaningful step towards doing something, I mean, I think infill and focusing on, you know, bringing people to the downtown core hub and living near their services. I mean, as a person that lives downtown, the convenience of being able to walk to my favorite shops, restaurants, watering holes, grocery store, my doctor's office, you know, everything like that, it's really an amazing thing. And I would want, you know, I would hope that other people would want to be able to have that experience too, and not have to get in the car or take a long bus ride or walk 35 minutes in the rain to get where they need to go. And so, you know, the status quo really is this like non-mixed single family zoning with parking minimums that sprawl everywhere. And like, obviously that's not working. And there's been kind of, I think within the last like 20 years and even more, you know, recently, like a societal shift away from that. And so I think that like Arcata needs to be on the forefront of that and recognize that like, the way of zoning and Euclidean zoning of the past, and no, you can't do this, no, you can't do that, no, like is not the way of the future. And so it's definitely some things that I do think that we need to talk about more, that I would, you know, like to have some discussion about, are these overlay zones, because I'm kind of, and maybe, you know, I think just to better explain to the public too, because I feel like I'm having a different understanding than what the public is, and so I don't know which one of us is wrong. But I think, you know, we need to look at some more specific examples of what that actually is going to look like and how that's going to impact those neighborhoods. And, you know, just kind of have a bigger discussion as a council about it, because I know there's been some pretty minimal planning commission discussion about it, and they've had meetings about it, but this is kind of a new idea to us at this point. And so I would like to be able to talk about that a little bit more. And then also, I know we had a bit of discussion about it, but coming back to affordable housing and inclusionary zoning citywide, and what that looks like and how that would be implemented. And I know, I think there was also some work that our city attorneys were doing looking at that piece as well. And finally, to add, and personally, Fred, as a millennial, I have also given up on home ownership. So, and that's just a societal problem, I think, not necessarily an Arcata problem or a gateway area plan problem. But yeah, so those are the things I still want to talk about, but I do feel very comfortable moving forward on the EIR with these policies in here. And I just want to thank the Planning Commission and our community development staff and everybody that has done, and the community that has done so much hard work, you know, over the past few years, providing input on this. And it's been a really great process to be part of. So I appreciate it, and I appreciate the community. Thank you.
And I'm fine to move forward as well. And I think Councilmember Schaefer addressed a lot of the email concerns that we've got regarding housing, and, you know, put her view on that. And I wanted to do something similar regarding parking, because that was another concern that came up. And I think, you know, often in the document, we refer to things as a car-free lifestyle. And I think that scares people, because they interpret it as like cars will be banned, or you won't be able to have a car. The way I see things happening is that it is going to become more difficult to drive than it is to use public transportation. Yes, I know another thing that's brought up is we don't have the infrastructure for the public transportation that we need to not have cars. But I see the shift happening at the same time. So, you know, if you look in the general plan, there are There talks about funds generated through parking meters or in lieu fees that would go towards transportation. And that's what I see is a shift of, in order to pressure all of us, who are still in our cars to get out of them, there has to be pressure, or it probably won't change. And so as we make it a little more inconvenient to drive, we're also using those funds to make it more convenient for public transportation. So I see it happening as a shift. And yes, we might be uncomfortable for a minute as we do this shift, but I don't know how how societal shifts happen without being uncomfortable. And we're doing this for the planet and for climate change. So, we might be uncomfortable, but I think the alternative is worse. But I just want to be clear that if you look at the example of farmer's market on a Saturday, most people, if you remember there's a farmer's market and you're driving, are not going to choose to drive through there. It is not convenient to drive through there. So you might actually choose to walk downtown that day, or perhaps take a different route. But it does change your behavior because it's going to be tricky to get through there. That's just an example, of a shift and a change. And so, in Cal Poly and the student body is brought up a lot, for housing and things and for parking. And I'll just stick with parking because Councilmember Schaefer tackled housing. But, I think Cal Poly is an asset to our community, and it also has impacts on our community. And, those in leadership at Cal Poly can do their part also by helping to maximize their assets and help reduce their impacts. And, when we talk about driving, there are many colleges that don't allow freshmen or certain, underclassmen to bring cars with them. Maybe that's something that's being talked about at Cal Poly. I don't know. But, that would change a level of parking and of traffic impacts. So I'm not saying that if we are headed in this direction, we have to for the earth and the climate. I'm not saying that it will be easy, but I think that it will be different than people who are very fearful of it, because we will have improvements to the public transportation that will help get us out of our cars in a more positive way.
Well, Arcata's always been in an evolution. And so when you think about Sunnybury and Westwood, those both fit what happened after the Second World War, when you created an area, your shopping center with all your residential around it. And so when Sunnybury was built, it wasn't in the city limits of Arcata and was annexed to the city limits of Arcata. And so you have Westwood. So those really fit a niche that happened after the Second World War, and the architectural style in those residential areas also fall into, after the Second World War, people came back from the war, they had low-slung houses, and during the war, they were able to build all these glass windows that they could put on the planes that made it possible to have plate glass windows in your buildings. So we have an evolution that's constantly happening, and that's what we're doing now. And the 2020 plan, not everything in it has happened yet, and it's going to take a while. And when we talk about this one, I told someone once, well, go to Target. When you come back, it'll be built, because that is the feeling and the worry. And it's going to take years for this to happen. It may never happen. And hopefully it will, and maybe we'll have some ways that we can help out with Happy Valley, that we can be able to encourage some people to move their facilities there, and that'll open up opportunities for development. So I like to see us move forward, and I think it's part of our evolution, and it's how we take care of our community and protect our open space around us.
Thanks. Kimberly?
So first, before I forget, I wanted to call out the OS 1E, which was from the call-in user, Lisa Brown. I don't think it should be added. We have always wanted to prioritize our open spaces and protect our forests, trails, and so I feel like that is in exact opposition of what we're trying to do. And as she pointed out, we wouldn't have our gem, the marsh, or our world-acclaimed redwood forest management system. So I really would like to preserve those lands as well. And then second, I just want to reiterate that several policies, it's not the same as 90, And I feel like we should definitely wait on these community benefits until we have the form-based codes for each one of these individual neighborhoods. And I want to say I agree with both Stacy and Sarah that we definitely need to move away from a car-centric city. And also, I wanted to tell Sarah, don't give up on home ownership opportunities. None of us should. We need to work on that. I think if we get creative solutions of cooperative housing, land trusts, and other opportunities, condominiums, that those opportunities still could come to fruition. And also, I feel like we need to spend some more time and return back to the inclusionary zoning conversation, and also affordable housing, true affordable housing, and also housing for the unhoused. And then also, where am I at? Oh, so maybe I'm confused. I need to go back and understand what our directive was, but I thought we were being presented this information and that we would have time to mull it over. And I don't feel like one more council meeting is going to throw off our timing that much. It'll give a little bit more time now that we're through the holidays for community input. I certainly could use the time. That meeting on the 12th was long, and I think it was a big ask. I feel like people felt pressured to get through everything in one night. I don't believe that, they had an opportunity to do all the homework that would be required to go through those almost 90 policies, each one. And so, that being said, we did send them with a directive, but it doesn't mean we need to rubber stamp it. I think that we need the time to go through each one of those policies ourselves instead of just, folding it into the gateway area plan, folding those items into our general plan. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kimberly. I just want to say is, Arcata is wonderful the way it is, but we all have to be comfortable with some change. This is a 20-year plan. We are planning for my children, for your children. This is a plan for the future. What I love about this plan is the open spaces protection, the daylighting of creeks, the circulation element that with road diets and making things accessible for all modalities of transportation in a really thoughtful way, that we're really centering the circulation on human scale and not car scale. I think it isn't cookie cutter. I think it's creative, and I think it's forward thinking, and I'm really proud of it. Saying that, I am not sure with what direction that you need from us tonight. I mean,
I was looking for a motion,
is
a recommendation.
I don't think that, I think that the recommendation was that receive and review the updated general plan. And I just want to say one more thing before you answer that. And Councilmember White, I agree with you. There's, a lot still to talk about, but like Councilmember Schaefer said, it will be going down and not going up. So we can still, continue with the EIR knowing that, we can pull back and as long as we're not moving forward. Now, I'm sorry.
We'll have so many comments coming in and on the EIR, and then we'll have such a review of that. And there may be great comments, and there may be comments we've already heard, but I think it's time to move forward.
And then I would just like to add, and maybe we could echo some council support for that, but to agendize, a future discussion of these overlay zones, and then also a separate agenda item and discussion of inclusionary zoning at future meetings coming up within our next few months, if that's supported by other council members.
Absolutely. So what would you like from us tonight?
Yeah, I don't need a motion. This really was just to start to get a sense for what the topics are that we want to be discussing over the next couple of months. The EIR is moving forward on the basis of this, and you do have the options of making, changes before your adoption, after your certification. I did want to report back one thing. I thought that we had included this, but I wasn't certain, so I didn't want to speak out of turn. But to Councilmember Atkins Salazar's question about the wastewater treatment plant, we do have under the public facilities 2B statements that talk about our long-range climate change goals for the wastewater treatment plant.
Thank you. I must have missed that.
Okay, well, at this point, I really want to thank the Planning Commission, you, Plan West and everybody for the incredible amount of work that has been put into the revisions of this document and the document in and of itself. And so I think, are we satisfied with that? All right, let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break. I think that Councilmember Stillman and Councilmember Atkins Salazar are going to recuse themselves for the Gateway discussion. So I will see everybody back in 5 minutes.
Let me just, we've gotten this far. We're sending the ERR, it's going to continue. So now what are you going to do with the Gateway discussion? I just need to know what it is. I'm looking on here.
I mean, it's going to be a general discussion just like this was.
Just
are
like
there things that the three
Dawn, I forgot my knitting.
council members want to discuss?
All right, let's take 5, everybody. All right, let's reconvene and move on to old business item B, review the December 2023 revised Gateway Area Plan. Director Loya, can we get a staff report, please?
Yeah, I don't have much of a staff report other than the note that we are doing basically the exact same thing with the Gateway Area Plan that we just did with the general plan with the recused members not in the room. And so the purpose is the same. This is an element of the general plan in the documents that you'll pick up. You'll see it embedded in the general plan in the place where I believe it should fall. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions. The Gateway Area Plan that you see here is the new version from December 12th again, and it is with the policies extracted that the Planning Commission recommended that they be extracted.
All right, fantastic. We're going to do the same thing. Let's open up with some questions and comments, then we'll open it up for public comment, and we'll circle back. Councilmember Schaefer.
I don't have much to add other than my previous comments about infill and climate and moving away from the traditional, I don't know, former way of doing things. So I don't have too many questions or comments to add. Us three have done a lot of work on this. We've had a lot of discussions. Again, I know that there's going to be some more fine tweaking when we get to form-based code and things about code that we're going to look at when we adopt that. I'm looking forward to those discussions. But on a policy level, I'm really proud of the work that's been done on the Gateway. And I just, again, thank the Planning Commission, thank the Community Development staff. Thank you, David. All that.
I'm still trying to find the track changes. Was there one from the final document to this one? I mean, to this last draft?
No, the, excuse me, the track changes version from the last version of the Gateway Area Plan is still available. It's still available for all of the elements, actually, the previous track changes version. And the changes that you see in this document are, minor cleanup, grammatical placement, formatting, and then the policies that were moved are listed in the table. So there's nothing that's been done that, to this document that's different. So there's not another track changes version from the last track changes version.
Could you tell me that table? Is it the table of contents or a particular?
No, it's the table that's in your staff report that outlines all of the policies that were moved. Yeah.
So those are the only things that we really need to be aware of.
Yeah. So if you wanted to view a track changes version from the General Plan 2020, now we've had several iterations, and so I believe this is accurate. But I think if you look at the track changes versions that are on the website right now, both of the general plan and of the Gateway Area Plan, those will reflect the changes from the original documents. And then the further changes that resulted in these final draft documents, they're not substantive changes, or the only substantive changes are the ones that are in the table that are in your staff report.
Thank you.
Do you want a couple minutes, Councilmember? I can say my
No, thank you.
2-second piece. Okay.
I just was looking in our report, and I guess I'm not seeing that table.
That's attachment A to the staff report.
Okay. So I was on page 114, I just didn't go far enough. You know what page that's on?
It starts on page 112, 111, 110. I'm keeping going of the agenda packet. So it starts on page 109 of the agenda packet.
Right. So what page would that track changes be on our report itself? Do you know?
Well, I don't think that table is located in the agenda in the staff report for this meeting. It's
Right.
not in the
No,
binder.
I'm looking in our staff report, and I'm trying to find that quickly, hopefully. On what page?
109.
109 is where that table is? Okay. Thank you. I added pages, so my pages don't quite correlate, but.
Oh, wait, no.
It's
Even before that.
There's
101, I think, is where it starts.
95. There's a lot of pages.
95, yeah, is where this one starts. And it's the exact same attachment that was attached to the previous staff report as well.
Okay.
Because what was taken out of here was pushed into there.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess what I'll say is I'll kind of echo Councilmember Schaefer, we've been talking about this Gateway Area Plan for as long as I've been on the council. I've sat through countless study sessions and watched every planning commission meeting. I feel like we're really close to the finish line with this, and I'm just, I'm really excited to see it move forward. I think it's a good plan, and, it's going out to EIR, right? We can always tweak right now, but again, getting mired down in the details is counter-effective, and I think I'm comfortable moving forward.
Could I mire us in just one detail? On packet page 98, 3.1, owner-occupied affordable housing as a community amenity. I feel like we've kind of dropped that ball of home ownership opportunities in the Gateway Area Plan. And so I'm wondering, what can we do to beef that up a bit?
The owner-occupied affordable housing as a community amenity is still part of the Gateway Area Plan as it relates to these D8 policies that house the community benefits, is the way that the commission has recommended it. And so the Gateway Area Plan will have, through its community benefits program, a tie-in to these policy areas. And in fact, these policies inform what the community benefits program is. And so maybe there's something more that you meant by that we've dropped the ball about owner-occupied affordable housing, but I think that the connection is still there to support owner-occupied affordable housing as a community amenity.
I guess I'm just more concerned that we are not really, in these words of insure or to, that's what I'm concerned about, is that it might not be, there's no way to guarantee that they're going to create that and choose that particular amenity. And
True.
Then we're back to what Sarah said, is she's given up hope for any possibility, and I just
I blame the Fed for that, though. I blame the Fed for that and the interest rates, not our housing policy in the city.
But we just don't have the housing stock for home ownership opportunities at this time.
And again, these are things that we can still be talking about while we are going through with the EIR, and we are still.
I'm sorry. I
No,
thought
no, no,
we
I'm
were
sorry.
supposed to do it now.
Oh, no, no.
I'm
And
ahead of
I
the
feel
game.
like we still are going to agendize another conversation on inclusionary zoning. And so
I'll note
I
that
mean,
as a topic that we'll
yeah,
come
there's
back
still,
to.
I mean, we're
Okay,
we're
so that's
still
what I
having
was asking.
conversations, but right now, at this point, I think this is the logical next step to get this started while we are still kind of working through
So
it
this
and having
is the
it.
time then to get this further agendized so that we can have another conversation more in depth, yeah? Okay, so
Yeah.
could we add inclusionary zoning to that as well?
Yeah, we've got that on the list.
Okay.
And I would just like to add, I mean, and this is maybe a topic for that agendized conversation, but I mean, what mechanisms really are available besides, using the community benefits program, but you can't, force the developer to say, hey, you're selling this as a condo, or hey, you're selling this as an owner occupied unit. And so, and again, you can have that and we can require it, but then that brings in that other piece that is so far out of our control of things like interest rates and housing. I mean, creating more housing stock and available housing is what's gonna hopefully do that and naturally do that. But again, that's a big question mark. And so, I mean, I think we have had some of these discussions around like, this is the mechanism that we can control and use to incentivize homeownership. Whether or not developers take advantage of that is somewhat out of our control, and we can work within that with inclusionary zoning and other pieces like that. But I think that is a good conversation to have as part of, I think, that inclusionary zoning conversation and how that fits into that, because I see those two pieces kind of fitting together. And then, yeah, and I know past discussions we've had about, housing trusts and other projects that the city is working on outside of the Gateway Area Plan and outside of this general plan that support and incentivize, first-time home ownership, loans for first-time home buyers, low-income home buyers, et cetera. So.
And again, I'm sorry, do you mind? And again, we're not losing any housing stock. Right now, we have houses in Sunnybray that 5 college students are living in that could move to, the Gateway area and be in a walkable, close to their job, being able to get to school, and then that home is now available for sale. So there are other mechanisms for home ownership.
So, yeah, I just was wanting to make sure that this was the time if we want to add, change, see. We'll have a deeper conversation about how we might make this more enticing to developers, by tying in inclusionary zoning for homeownership opportunities as well. So we'll get that agendized, and then we'll kind of fold it into here later. Like, we might assign it more points or whatever that might be. I don't know that we've ever dug that deep.
No, it's a high point, like it's like 9. It's like one of the highest point values that is on that community benefits table.
Right, but that's for home ownership, so maybe we could do more on the inclusionary zoning so that those two, together might ensure more home ownership opportunities. So that was all I had as far as the Gateway area plan. I think that, as we open up to community, there might be more things coming up.
Oh, yes, that's right. Let's pause and take it out to public comment. About the Gateway area plan.
Considered de-incentivizing people buying Airbnbs or homes to be used as rentals. I've wondered if the city has done that. It seems like, I heard there was something like 400 to 600 plus rental homes in Trinidad, and that deprives local families of homes. It's a necessity for local people, and I just wondered if the city has done anything to de-incentivize and maybe even attach fees for each subsequent home that somebody's buying to do passive income with Airbnbs. Just wondering. And then I'm going to give the rest of my time to Fareed.
Hello again, council members. Inside the Gateway plan and project, it needs to incorporate eco-city development. That is a necessity for the restoration of the biosphere. I have sent in sample designs to Karen Deemer and to Alex Stillman. Alex Stillman assured me she would get those documents to the rest of you, and if she hasn't, then that's a huge conflict of interest right there. That's a concern because she's not being transparent. So one of the basic designs in eco-city development that I've personally developed with my business, the Emerald Dragon, is redwood trees naturally have the capacity to merge together when they grow closely next to each other. So they can be strategically planted to create the exterior walls for building structures. And then multiple layers can be grown next to them to make the walls extra thick, and the interior trees can be redirected to grow diagonally inward to make roofing structures, then horizontally back outward to create additional floor levels, then merging vertically back into the original structure. And with integration of electroculture and magnetoculture technology that utilizes energy from the magnetic field of the planet to accelerate the health and growth of plants by up to 400%, enables redwood trees to be able to grow up to 12 feet per year, enabling these tree buildings to be able to grow in reasonable time spans for modern city development. After the initial floor levels get developed in these tree building cultivations, it can grow a new floor level in around every 5 years, depending on the diameter of the tree. And when modern technologies are integrated into these designs, such as electricity, plumbing, lighting, heating, customized ecosystems can be created on each floor level of these tree buildings, which can enable housing systems that can produce their own food forests inside of the housing system. It integrates modern city developments back into harmony with the ancestral ties to the ecosystem. The natives believe that the trees are our ancestors, and part of that belief comes from the fact that the trees are alive. They remember. They were there when the ancestors themselves were here, and they can depart those memories onto the current generation. These tree building designs bring new definition to the term family tree, and they are cheap and affordable to make and create housing developments that can turn into skyscrapers to the next generation and make houses affordable to people like the council members and create affordable and accessible housing to everyone. In addition, the Gateway project also needs to incorporate the use of modern technological advancements, such as quantum computing systems that can be utilized to create a biofeedback communication system with the ancient forest ecosystem. And next generation sequencing data analysis technology can be integrated into the quantum computing system to create a live interface system between the living forest ecosystem and humanity to establish conscious communication between the two of us once more. And this technology can also be integrated to create sampling devices that can create a scientific historic database of all microbial changes in the habitat that can implement the Gateway Project into the White House's One Health initiative to create nature-based resolutions towards solving health issues in the modern world, as well as the tree buildings also providing this because trees themselves produce most of their light inside of the ultrasound, which has been proven to be able to kill viruses and bacteria, including the coronavirus. Plants are able to speak and they communicate in ultrasound. And, the light spectrum is in ultraviolet. And yeah, they communicate in ultrasound. And ultrasound has also been proven to be able to kill targeted viruses and bacteria in the environment, including the coronavirus. These are nature's natural immune systems and defense systems, and we need to be incorporating our evolution and development as a city towards utilizing what nature has already proven successful since time immemorial. In addition, subterranean infrastructure can also be developed through these eco-city developments. The redwood trees have root systems that are very shallow, only going 6 to 10 feet deep. We can create subterranean infrastructure by building tunnels that have metal tubes that create framework systems for the tunnels that are designed to excrete super nutrients, to lubricate the outside of the tubes and attract the root systems to grow around the tubes over time. And it'll create tunnel systems that are literally made out of the redwood root systems itself that can also be remodified to create subterranean building infrastructure. The root systems themselves can help strengthen the forest ecosystem to be able to reestablish old growth conditions, and it can be made so multiple levels of subterranean building infrastructure can be developed and enable the deeper building infrastructure to be readapted to the mycelium network, creating an entire level of the city made out of living fungi. We have some of the greatest environmental experts on the planet here, and we need to be incorporating their expertise into the next evolution for our city development. And by doing this, we can incorporate the White House's new core prioritizations in their national nature assessment to create greater shade-resistant, cooling local climates and atmosphere, creating sustainable agriculture development, and being able to integrate the expansion of city development with the reforestation of the planet.
Thank you so much. I also want to say that if you send it to Councilmember Stillman, she can't send it to all of us. That's a Brown Act violation. The best thing to do is send it to City Manager, and she can disseminate it to the rest of us. Thank
Okay.
you.
Or all of our emails are on the city website, or we can get you a card after the meeting too, so you can contact all of us.
Awesome, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't know the councilman was recused from these matters before.
It's all.
You spent a lot of money on the Gateway and a lot of time, and I think one of the most important things that you approved actually, and you were supposed to do, that hasn't happened, is 3D modeling, visualization mock-ups. 99.9% of the public is not going to read all these documents, but what they want to see is what it looks like. This is the basics of all urban design. When any project, even large or small, goes through the Planning Commission. So it's a little uncomfortable for me today and a lot of other people that nothing, what is your vision? It's like it's a bunch of language, but we want to see what it, generally what it looks like. And you could start out by, some simple renderings that show what these heights look like. If you're a fan of 7 stories, then let's see it. But we need to see it from this perspective of the hills. We need to see what it looks like from a street level. You want the public to know what it's like, what your vision is to walk through these streets and believe in your vision for the next 20, 30 years. And you're not doing it. And I brought this up to Planning Commission a year and a half ago. And I went a little bit further. I said, not only do you need those photographs, but you need to put it on a mailer and you need to stick it in the mail and get it to every resident in the city. And that way they can see it, and then you can direct them to your website or whatever for more information. And the answer was, we're not going to do that because there's the fear that the public's going to see the heights of these buildings and they're not going to like it. And it's unbelievable they would actually say that, but I'm glad they're that honest from that standpoint, because that's saying you don't really believe in democracy. You don't believe in what the public really wants to know about this project. So it's, I mean, you need to do that. I'd also say, as far as the buildings, we seem to have, I mean, the last time I went to Planning Commission, it was, you know, sometime after our lookbook, which everyone picked what their vision they wanted things to look like. And we had Matt that basically said, you know, I don't want those setbacks anymore. And it's basically, I'm afraid that's not going to even happen. So we retreated from, you know, the dream state. And I think David even jumped in at that point and said, what Matt is saying is that what we're going to get is really Sorrel Place. So it doesn't, I don't see Sorrel Place as the place where all these plazas are and all of these areas to hang out. So you're a little off on how things have kind of changed over time. Thanks.
Thanks, Gregory.
Okay. Mike? Hey, Jeff Harris, Myrtletown, actually, so making a little bit of a trip. Just a couple things that bear on this sort of tangentially. One, there's been a lot of talk about climate change, and the relevant issue here, the most relevant issue is most likely the sea level rise. And that's very uncertain. I mean, the estimates now, they might get 3 to 4 degrees Celsius, but sea level rise estimates are anywhere from, say, 1 meter to several meters. So that's a big unknown. So that's something to look into. And like, people don't even know exactly what that's going to be. So you need to look at their likelihood range. And then the second thing, parking. And my take on this is a little different. I actually do a lot of walking, and then sometimes when I like drive into a place, I like to just to go to like the next commercial zone. But the businesses are so parochial about the parking, so like you have like designated parking for one business, and then there's like a big barrier, you have to go out on the street, and it's very discouraging of you know, bikers, pedestrians, anybody who wants to say like shop at one place and then walk to the next place. And if you look at like the malls from the 40s and 50s, people would park outside and they would go into the interior mall. Look at the newer places, they're designed to get your car as close to the business as possible. So I don't really believe that people are serious about the environmental issues, health and safety issues. I think it's, what I really see is like getting as many cars on the road as possible and keeping them moving as much as possible. I look at people, they want to drive fast, they want to drive large vehicles, they're inclined to drive long distances. So I'm not talking about so much Arcata, but when people generally talk about these environmental issues, particularly global warming, local communities, it's generally lip service, little window dressing. I don't really see anything substantive, and I don't believe you're going to do anything substantive. When I say you, I mean people in this country in general. So let's talk to that a little bit, okay?
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Fred Wise. Strictly on EIR matters, in the Gateway Plan, there's a primary opportunity zone table, which shows, the gap relates to a build out of 3,500. I don't think we're getting anywhere close to that. There are numerous errors in that primary opportunity zone table. But if they have a lower number, then it's okay with the EIR. If the EIR approves 3,500, then we'll wind up with a lower number when we get those errors worked out. One of my complaints about the Gateway Area Plan is that a real lack of innovation. It's very normal. Former Planning Commission Chair Julie St. Elcock pointed this out. I pointed it out. A lot of things that we started out with, innovative ideas, have just gone by the wayside. It's unfortunate. We can bring them back if we really care about them. There were many policies that were dropped that I disagree with. Their need to drop them. One is 3A, plan for approximately 500 new residential units in the Gateway area for the next 20 years, recognizing the full build-out potential in the area is close to 3,500 units. That was dropped. That seems significant. Another one is perhaps smaller, 5B, Creamery District. Continue to use existing placemaking and naming of the Creamery District in city mapping. This was dropped because It was felt that it is going to be used, it's not going to be dropped. Well, a future city council could drop it. This was one of the few things that the Creamy people asked for, and it was dropped. I don't think should be any hotels in the Gateway area. That might be good for the city business, but it's bad for housing. Where there's a hotel, there's not housing. In the staff report is written, the commission arrived at a majority consensus in each of the policies in the Gateway plan. This is the problem. There's no such thing as a majority consensus. They're two different things. Majority, of course, is thumbs up, thumbs down. Consensus is a discussion where people meet in the middle. That's what didn't happen. Council member White commented on Lisa Brown's open space 1E. That's why these things need to be gone through thoroughly. There's lots of changes. There's not a track changes version. As was mentioned, the massing diagram that was part of the $118,000 from a year ago has yet to be seen. That's an important diagram that vanished. The visualization placeholder page also vanished in this current version of the general area, Gateway Area Plan, excuse me. Home ownership says encourage, we can do much better. I have lots more, but they don't relate to getting this through to the EIR. We'll bring them up in the next few months. Thanks.
Thank you, Fred.
Hi, I'm Joanne McGarry. I live in the Gateway area in the Creamery District. I don't drive a car these days. I take a bus. And one of the things I really would like for us to think about is a hub for transit in the Gateway area. There's a lot of spaces there that could be an improvement to our existing transit center for a whole lot of reasons. Primarily if a lot of people are going to be living in that area, in multi-unit buildings, et cetera, and we're not wanting to encourage them to drive cars, it would behoove us to design a really functional transit center, accessible, something attractive so people will get on the bus and out of their cars. So I would hope that that would be something that is really strongly considered.
Thanks, Joanne. Anybody else for in-person comment? We're not going to be coming back. Let's go to Zoom.
All right, our first speaker is Ray and Adam. Go ahead.
Howdy. A lot of these gateway provisions are the same as the overall provisions that we had talked about in the previous agenda item. So I just wanted to dive into a couple of these. They are labeled with the new, let's see, what is it called? The updated policy number. One thing I wanted to call out, and I hope my understanding is correct, but for OS-1E, this outlines the vacant or underutilized land development. As another commenter mentioned, this would allow for development in existing vacant and underutilized properties with low natural resource value as a strategy to permanently protect high resource value open space and provide high quality open space. From what I understand, this permanently protects outdoor space and creates public parks for existing vacant land. I would suggest clarifying this language so there isn't confusion in the future, since this is an important and considerate provision. D-1A identifies a provision to ensure quality materials that maintain their appearance over time. Again, it would be nice to have a specific call out for carbon neutral or carbon negative materials in this. For D-1, I believe L, this is utility screening. This outlines screening for utility boxes, but I'd like to ask the council and staff to consider public support for new development to create to locate utility boxes underground rather than simply screening them. So for developments, finding ways the city can fiscally support moving these underground, not only for safety, but also city beautification. Moving on, D-4A for mid-block passageways. These are for blocks that are greater than 300 feet in length. I'd like to ask the council to consider specifying provisions for green alleyways or green streets to help stormwater collection, community beautification, and neighborhood character, so that these mid-block passageways aren't an afterthought or overlooked. For D-E, 8D, this provides some of the strongest public support to aid future developments to provide owner-occupied affordable housing as a community amenity. I'd like to ask how we can make this irresistible to future developments by either reducing fees, providing infrastructure support, or expedited timelines. These are all measures that would encourage developers to be able to responsibly provide these options for our community. GA-11A and 11B. This would add utility infrastructure system improvements to the city's capital improvement plan. I'd like to suggest some future forward thinking in terms of water treatment in relation to
Thanks,
microplastics.
Raylene. That's your time. Did you want to turn it over to Adam?
I don't know. Do you want to turn it over?
There's like 2 things left. Where are we?
Oh.
Okay, and pre-treatment to remove organic materials and microplastics, which lessen the filtration needs and later in subsequent.
No, you skipped a part.
Oh, I skipped something.
No, it's in Tampa, Florida.
Oh, sorry. Recently, Tampa, Florida has made steps forward in implementing Dutch water pre-treatment to remove organic materials and microplastics, which lessen the filtration needs later in subsequent filtration processes as microplastics become more and more of a presence in our world. Yeah, let's protect the bay and our aquaculture. I highly support working on, GA-11B. I highly support working with the county to create an enhanced infrastructure finance district. And GA-6F, this outlines a public plaza in Southwest Industrial Area to establish a new public open space or plaza in the Barrel District. I would love to see provisions for pedestrian-only outdoor space to facilitate more communal cultural events like Friday Night Market, but in Arcata. Sounds cool to me. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Adam. And once again, Raylene, if you want to email that to us, I know there was a lot of detail that I don't think that was captured. So thank you so much. Next.
All right, our next one is iPhone. Go ahead, iPhone.
Hi, this is Jim Becker. Thank you for my time to speak. I do appreciate the policies from the original, what was sort of the original spirit of the gateway. I mean, things as far as massing to existing structures. I know it's been spoken about with the Planning Commission. I hope that makes it to the end and considers that with both the neighborhoods, businesses, and single-family homes. I still have a concern about GA7I, which is the no net loss of Class 1 trails, allows the realignment and relocation of Class 1 trails for improvement of transportation access connectivity. It speaks specifically to the L Street corridor, and once again, my concern, sort of in the spirit of the directions you're heading, leaves the door open for possible, removal or still relocation of it. And at this point in time, with all the efforts that's been made by the council, and in the spirit of that, I would consider that gets clarified, that if it is, it's not specifically for that corridor between, it would be Alliance and Samoa Boulevard. Also, I am glad to see GA9F, which is solar shading, ensure new developments minimize solar shading of surrounding properties. And I already did speak of the massing, and yeah, hopefully in the whole process, as you move forward with the concern about state bonus densities, that are hopefully you can still maintain those policies, which I think are what sort of assures the public that this can be a good project. I should say, in this case, a good plan. It's been referred to as a project many times. Anyway, thank you for the time to speak, and good luck with everything.
Thanks, Jim.
And Melody, go ahead, Melody.
Hi again, council members. My name is Melody, and I'm a co-director of the Redwood Coalition for Climate and Environmental Responsibility. I'd like to express Rocker's full support for the Gateway Area Plan. Everyone agrees that Arcata is a special community. Because it's so special, Rocker believes that Arcata deserves housing that is walkable and affordable to more people. Across the country, cities are struggling with housing crisis. This has led to increased costs of housing and staggering amounts of homelessness. This plan is an opportunity for us to address that crisis that we see in our community here. And I'd like to remind us of what Councilmember Atkins Salazar stated during the general plan discussion, that significant positive societal change isn't possible without some discomfort. This plan makes strides, which some, but not all members of our community are uncomfortable with, to be a better community for our planet. It includes the best bike and pedestrian infrastructure of any plan proposed in Arcata, denser housing that allows people to walk and bike to from their destinations, will be better for our emissions and protect our beautiful wetlands and forests from sprawling suburbs. After 2 years of the city working on this plan, it's time to approve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Melody.
And we have no other online public comment.
All right, then I will bring it back to the council. Anybody have any last comments? I'm good.
I do. So I didn't realize, and I looked on and I thought I had downloaded copies of prior Gateway area plan renditions, but when you go to the site, there's no way to even find the track changes, but that could be me. Sometimes it's not as user-friendly as I'd like it to be.
I can send out the link.
Okay.
It's on the website.
Could we put, I would hope that we don't take out 5B, the Creamery District one. If we could possibly not drop that one, that would make me really happy. And then also, if we could do some clarification with the no net loss of trails that James Becker wrote, GA7I, just so that he and everyone else is assured with the L Street corridor, it's not going to be affected. And I didn't write down what, I believe it was, well, maybe it was really, and perhaps it was James, about the microplastics, but that was certainly intriguing. And maybe when they send those links, I can maybe, and then the public plaza in the Barrel District, also very much would love to further explore that. And then if we could keep, I know that we're taking out the policies related to development in the zone, they're going to go into the land use element. Is there any reason why they can't be in both places?
I mean, there's no law against it. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to have the same policy in two places. The general plan is a whole document that is consistent within itself.
Right. So it would be in the land use element. I'm just, not everybody, is going to jump over to another. Would there be any reference to that at all? Or would they just have to be really knowledgeable of the Gateway area plan and understand that anything that had to do with land use would be found in land use in the general plan in that specific element?
I think it's more so, and I think this is at least fairly understood within the development community, they need to be cognizant that anything that happens in the gateway is subject to everything in the general plan and specifically what's in that gateway. And that is true in our current general plan, i.e. if you were also in, say, the coastal zone.
Right.
You have to comply with our current land use code and our coastal zone policies. So, I mean, consistent with that. It would just be duplicative, I think, is.
Sure, and I guess if they're not in the planning realm, they might not even know or care about that anyway then. I guess I just was like, it was here and then it's going away, and I was just like, could we just leave it in both? But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I guess for me, the confusion in the future might be, why do you have some in both, but not all in both? But you want me to comply with all of them?
Right, consistency, right.
So,
yeah, okay.
But we can talk about that further.
No, that's okay. I just was, having things leave, like, oh no. And give me just, if somebody else wants to jump in here, I'm kind of going back and forth on my notes.
I think that, I don't have anything else to say.
Oh, I did have something, sorry. So late news that came in, and I told this person that I would bring it to the attention. So everyone knows about the big earthquake that just happened in Japan, that 55 people died, unfortunately. And so I guess the concern is that, I'll just read you what he says. So above the pictures of the earthquake engineered buildings in Japan after the recent 7.6 earthquake, and as you guys know, we're in earthquake country. So these structures from the pictures show that they're relatively intact. It's the soil that failed. And so that's always been one of the concerns of these 7, 8-story buildings from the very beginning of being in the Gateway Area Plan is that it is also on alluvial soil. If I hope I'm saying that right, correct me if I'm not. And that kind of soil, it kind of turns to jello. And so they just asked me to, bring this back in. Tall buildings do not do well, even those that are engineered to resist earthquakes. And for the sake of the future Arcata citizens, I urge you to reconsider the height of the buildings proposed in our Gateway Plan. The life you save may be his grandson's. And that was from a concerned citizen. Thank you.
We can certainly add that to the list of things to talk about in the future. The seismic safety standards for modern buildings are designed for life safety. They're not designed to protect the buildings. They could be designed to protect the buildings. There are ways to engineer buildings so that they're almost, invincible to, to damage from various outside forces, but they would also be so expensive that you couldn't afford to build them. So the building codes are designed so that, buildings can take quite a beating. There are foundation designs for moderate liquefaction soils. If you look at a map of the city of Arcata and look at the soil types, you'll see that everything that is not on the hill slopes is in a moderate or high liquefaction zone for the most part. There are a few areas that aren't. So we live in an area that it has, liquefiable soils, and we have building codes that allow us to design buildings to be built on those high liquefaction soils.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. Let's call Councilmember Atkins Salazar and Councilmember Stillman back in, and we will continue with new business. All right, thanks for bearing with us, folks. We have one more item, and then we'll get to more public comment. Thanks. All right, so we are on to new business, which is introduce ordinance number 1566, amending the Arcata Municipal Code, Title II, Chapter 10, to make biennial consumer price index adjustments to campaign contribution limitations. And City Clerk Dory, can we have a councilman report?
Good evening, Mayor Matthews and Council. I am Bridget Dory, your City Clerk. In 1992, the Arcata voters adopted a ballot measure establishing campaign contribution limitations, at that time set at $100 per election cycle, to be adjusted by this consumer price index every even-numbered year before an election. The City of Arcata will hold a general municipal election in 2024. Therefore, the campaign contribution limitation is due to be updated. According to the current CPI, this year the limit would increase by $20 to a limit of $240. The introduction of ordinance number 1566 will begin the process to make the adjustment for this year. Arcata's campaign contribution limitation regulations can be found in the municipal code at Title II, Chapter 10. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks. Anybody have any questions? Seems pretty straightforward to me. I'm just going to ask anybody here if they...
I'm glad that we limit campaign contributions. It's a good thing. It's the way our whole country should be going. And I think it's wonderful, and I think we should continue this. So I'm very excited.
And we've been doing it for a really long time, so it's a really good thing.
Hey, wow, 1992 wasn't that long ago, Alex.
Yes, and to both of you, I agree. Just a quick question. So is that $240, just to clarify for everybody? So that's the amount that an individual could give somebody's campaign? And is it also the same for, like, if a business was contributing, or an organization, I guess? Is it the same for that?
Yes, that is true. Whether it be an individual person or an organization. 240 will be the limit this election.
Could I clarify, and I apologize, I thought it was 220 and that we were increasing it.
It is.
Okay.
To 240, yeah.
Right,
That's the
sorry.
CPI
I'm back
increase
to
from
thinking it
220
was
to
going to increase
240.
by 100 again, which I already talked to Gary. It's like, no. Okay, thank you.
All right, let's open it up to public comment.
Good evening, Council. My name is James Clore, and I've got a couple of comments on the general readability of this ordinance and other finicky bits. It starts with, no person other than a candidate shall make, and no campaign treasurer shall solicit or accept any contribution which could cause the total amount contributed by such person during an election cycle in support or opposition to such candidate for city office, including contributions to all committees supporting or opposing such candidate, to become an amount exceeding the base amount of $100 for the election cycle, adjusted every 2 years pursuant to Section 3015 to $240 in 2024. I would propose splitting this, as is done in other local ordinances, to simply state that these contribution limits do not apply to a candidate's personal funds, and to also break it out into bullet points. This is a very long run-on sentence, which I think is difficult for people who are maybe first assuming the position of treasurer or candidate to fully understand. If possible, I would also wipe out the section talking about the original base amount and simply state that the amount may not exceed $240. If you're going to bring this back every 2 years, I don't think you need to talk about the adjustment. It's mentioned below in the same ordinance, Section 3015. If in another ordinance, I could see the call out, but it just adds wordiness to an already wordy sentence. Overall, I would like to see this be more easily readable and understandable. What I read above, like I said, is one very long run-on sentence, which I personally can get lost in. I also think the election cycle period is maybe a bit confusing or could be wrong. 4 years I feel like is too long, and I foresee complications with the way the ordinance is written. For example, if I donated the max to a candidate on October 15th of 2024, if that same candidate ran again in 2028, I would not be able to donate again until October 16th of 2028. If the candidate forgets that I donated, or they have a new treasurer running the campaign, or I forget that I donated, all of these scenarios, which are very likely, they'd be in violation of this ordinance, and I don't think that's the goal. You could either tie it to a particular committee that's formed, or shorten up the time period, or do a max per year like the city of Eureka or the county of Humboldt. And then in Part F, duties of campaign treasurer, I'm not sure that this is clear enough for the situation that arises where a donation in excess of the limit occurs. Other local ordinance allow the funds to be returned to the contributor or to the general fund, which I like. Going into the general fund's great. Also, it appears that this allows the funds to be spent, as it says, any such contribution so deposited shall be paid promptly from campaign funds, if any, to the city treasurer for deposit in the general fund of the city. What if there are no campaign funds left? There's some ambiguity here that I feel isn't necessarily helpful. The funds should simply be returned or deposited into the general fund. Thank you, Council. I do apologize for being kind of a stick in the mud on this. I appreciate these campaign finance ordinances and their goal for transparency and getting kind of money out of politics. And if we do this in 2 years, that's great too, because it comes back every 2 years, which I also love as part of your ordinance. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I'm not intending to run for office, but I'm glad it's 240 and not 420.
All right. Anybody else in person for a comment? Anybody online?
We have no online public comment.
Well, I mean, I think just a short version is anybody interested in having our legal team clean this up? I mean, some of these ordinances are older and clunky. I do know I had to ask for clarification multiple times trying to figure things out when running. So I hear you. So is anyone interested in doing that, or is this already being done when they're going through our policies, or what?
And I know that the city of Eureka is kind of different than the city of Arcata. One of us is a charter city and one of us is not. And so that's why they have different ways of doing things. So does that affect the way these ordinances are written?
I think I'm just asking to clean ours up, keep it the same.
Yeah,
like, I don't want to
sure.
change anything, just make it readable. Like, let's not rock the boat, but let's make it easy. Can we simplify it?
I'm all about making ordinances easy to read. What I would recommend is that you introduce this ordinance tonight. I would probably recommend that you adopt it just to get through this election cycle. Part of the complication on this one is that there is a voter initiative tied to part of this ordinance, so some of that language, I think, has carried through. So I just need a little bit of time to tease that out, but I'd be happy to do that. And anytime we can make it more understandable and contemporary is positive. I just want to make sure that we're not eliminating something that we would need to return to the voters, or if we do need to, that we have that conversation as well.
Yeah, I agree with Stacy on that, and thank you for, enlightening us with that extra information. But yeah, cleaning it up would be great if that's possible, just because now I'm questioning. I'm like, oh God, did I mess up last time out? Uh-oh. So, making sure that we all understand so people who run for office can understand, because, yeah, Bridget did a lot of explaining, I know, to all of us. So, yeah.
Okay, well, has anyone made a motion down there?
No.
Go for it.
I would move for, I would move for adoption of ordinance number 1566.
Can we amend that to say introduction?
I'm not reading the whole title. Would you like me to read the whole title?
Yes,
Okay,
please.
just a second. Introducing of.
Would you? Okay. Do you want me to do it? I got it right here, Alex.
I have it too.
Okay.
Introduce ordinance number 1566, amending the Arcata Municipal Code, the title 2, chapter 10, to make biannual consumer price index adjustments to campaign contribution and limitations.
I will second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes. Good job, everybody. All right, now it is time for, once again, oral and written communication. The city appreciates public input. This time is provided for people to address the council or submit written communications on matters not on the agenda. Please know that pursuant to the Brown Act, the council cannot discuss or take action on items that are not listed on the posted agenda. At the end of all oral and written communications, the council may respond to statements. Supported requests that require council action will be set by the council for a future agenda or referred to staff. Speakers addressing the council may be limited to 3 minutes with a maximum of 5 minutes, and a time limit on the overall length of oral communications may be imposed. So, if you are in person and want to give public comment, please line up at the podium. Please raise your hand if you're on Zoom, or press star 9 if you're on the phone. We are going to take all in-person comment first, then we are going to go to Zoom. We're not going to go back and forth. So if you have something to say about anything that is not on the agenda, go ahead and get in line. It's 3 minutes this evening, 3 minutes. Thanks.
Paul Patino, Arcata. Simple request, ceasefire. No ifs and buts, strings, concerns, just ceasefire. So I appreciate all of you to consider that. And whether you write a letter or a resolution or whatever, get it to Jared Huffman and our 2 senators. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Very good. Okay, so I'm going to speak to that issue. So why is Israel invading the Gaza Strip? What do you call a pacifist Jew? You call him dead, very dead. Thus, there must not be a lasting ceasefire until the hostages have been released and Hamas has been dealt with appropriately. So, to understand the current situation, one must consider some history, starting with that dear warlord Muhammad, who by the 620s, capitalizing on his concoction of a distorted and corrupted version of Judaism, was leading a marauding band of pillaging brigands to take over the Arabian Peninsula. In time, his followers had conquered lands and converted populations from Tunisia through Indonesia. World War I led to the fall of 5 empires, including that of the Ottoman Turks, whose lands included what was to become Palestine. Having acquired these territories, the British, in 1948, gave the lion's share, about 80% of them, to their Arab occupants. These Arab lands became a Palestinian state, Jordan. A small portion, about 20%, was set aside for the Jews for what was to become Israel. This was the 2-state solution. Now, the Arab Muslims were very unhappy with this state of affairs, so once the British had left, they attempted to destroy Israel. However, Israel successfully defended itself over the next 25 years and came into possession of more territories, including those of the Sinai Peninsula, the Gaza Strip, and the West Bank. Most of these were returned, particularly the Sinai to Egypt and Gaza to the Palestinians. Now, the Egyptians have been at peace with Israel for quite a few years, but Hamas is seeking to exterminate the Jews and eliminate their state. As part of this effort, on October 7, 2023, Hamas engaged in the provocative and brutal attack on and massacres of Israeli civilians at the music festival and in their own homes. Israel was compelled by duty and had the desire to defend itself and its people, which required the elimination of Hamas. Hamas also uses their own people as human shields by placing their bases in the vicinities of hospitals, schools, and other civilian facilities. Thus, when Israel eliminates these bases of operations, excessive collateral damage occurs. Now, certain cultural Marxists have decided to make common cause with the Palestinians, including Hamas, as they see the Israelis as being the oppressors and the Palestinians as being the oppressed. However, the application of this dogma grossly oversimplifies the complicated and long-standing conflict there. Note that in Article 7 of the Charter of Hamas, one finds the following concluding statement. The day of judgment will not come until Muslims fight the Jews. When the Jew will hide behind stones and trees, the stones and trees will say, O Muslim, O servant of God, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him. The document continues saying, our struggle against the Jews is very great and very serious, and demands the destruction of Israel and the replacement of both Israel and the Palestinian territories as an Islamic state. Thus, Israel is locked in an existential struggle with Hamas, and a lasting ceasefire must not be put into place until Hamas has been eliminated.
Thank you. Next speaker.
I'm also speaking on the same topic. My name is Fareed Atiq Ahmed. My family are landowners deep inside the Jacoby Creek Forest, neighboring the Arcata-Jacoby Creek tract. I come to you here today as a neighbor, a member of the community, a patriot of America, and a servant of Allah, the cherisher and sustainer of the cosmos, to call upon my fellow Americans to reclaim the cultural heritage of our people and take action to preserve the dignity of humanity. The strength of our nation has always been in the strength of our local community. So I come here today to let our cries for peace be heard throughout the planet, echoing through the chambers of the cosmos beyond. Take action and make prioritization to bring peace to the Middle East. The genocide taking place there represents nothing to the heritage of the people, the holy grounds of my people, of our people, as Americans. Those that are terrorizing those regions on both the Israeli and Palestine side do not represent the Israelites nor the Palestinians' faith, and those that terrorize have forsaken the sacred practices of our people. The Jews need to be spending their time and prioritizing studying and studying the sacred teachings of the Torah, and the Muslims need to be practicing and embodying the teachings of the Holy Quran, as well as all of the other sacred texts which are encompassed within the religion of Islam. These lands are also holy grounds of the Christian faiths, and it violates all of our sacred ancestral practices, the teachings that have been passed down from Allah, the most merciful, most kind. So I say to you, Arcata, do it. Ignite the flames that first birthed the cosmos. Let the mercy and kindness of humanity rain down upon this planet and bring life into the barren deserts once again. Practices of war have nothing to do with our values as the American people. We are a government founded by we the people, and it is we the people who are the masters of our system of government, not the other way around. And as a self-governing nation, it requires an educated population, something that we have lost in modern times, but we can regain here and now. Promote supplies for peaceful mediation, aiding the injured and disenfranchised, bringing food and water for those who need it most, and reclaiming what it is to be human, what it is to be humane, what it is to be one with humankind, to recognize our own humanity, and to walk the path of the humanitarian. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our past city has done a beautiful thing with a plaque up the street on 7th Avenue here, 7th Street. It's the vista point above by Health Sport there, and it's a view of Arcata's past, and I would, hopefully everyone would see that. I think they did it along with the state of California and the Wiyot tribe, but it basically shows a map of what Arcata looked like in the 1850s. And then the change that happened from that standpoint. And I think it's a valuable thing to look at because it helps you, with decisions you have to make about the city in the future. I'm a little confused at times when environmentalists have called in and said that, that they think infill is a great idea in an era that's in one of those areas that was an estuary and a marsh, because as Councilmember White has pointed out, what's happened in Japan, it's not only, it's very terrible soil, but it's also to build on that it was a wetland area. And this is important because you're going to have a coastal commission that's going to look at all this. And I'll give you some insight. I don't think they're going to be too happy about the vision down there. You know, I've kind of written you about in chapter 3 in the coastal commission, especially on sea level rise. And you know, you're a prime candidate for that legislation, and I don't know of what other city in probably California that is going to be affected with such a big area. So it's true that infill is a very good way of building, you know, mid-rises or even high-rises, but not if it's a wetland area. So it's a poor decision. And unfortunately, you're still going that route. But I think you're gonna find out from the Coastal Commission what their view is on this, and I think they're going to tell you no. So I would also point out from the standpoint of being in the scoping process in the past here, a lot of talk about the population growth, especially from the university. We have, I think, a couple of people from our council that go over there as liaisons. And I haven't heard any talk, but from the standpoint, you know, they claimed there was going to be 2,000 students this fall, and we got like 123. We actually have like over 300 empty dorms there. So there's also 2 big projects, the Library Circle project that was on their website, and another one that was above the art department there in sculpture and ceramics. Huge projects. They're not going to happen. They pulled them off their website. So there's been some dramatic change and a pullback on the growth provisions there.
Thanks, Greg.
Hi, my name's Tricia Murphy. Thank you for allowing this opportunity to talk about this topic. We are a different group than came in the last time and asked for this resolution. Over 67% of the American citizens, both on the left and the right side, together 67%, and it's probably more than that now, of the American citizens want a ceasefire. The reason we don't have a ceasefire is AIPAC has bought and paid for most of the votes in Washington. That's just a fact. AIPAC and several other Israel lobbies. 22,000 dead. They speculate that there's maybe 32 to 42,000 actually dead under the rubble. I can't believe we have to ask the city of Arcata, who claims to be humanitarians, who care about people. I can't believe we have to, and women who are probably a lot of mothers here. They're pulling babies out of the rubble with shrapnel in their eyes. They're going to operate on amputees, children that have lost limbs, and they don't have anesthesia. They don't have food. They don't have water. They were told to go to the south. They bombed them there. They bombed them on the way. They bombed hospitals. They bombed schools. It goes on and on. They're bombing and they're sniping indiscriminately. Day before Christmas, they killed 2 Christian women, a mother and a daughter, who left the church to go to the bathroom. Israeli soldiers picked them off. And then they continued to throw a grenade into the church and kill another 7 people. And this is just one little thumbnail of what's happening there. And we're lulled into thinking this is okay by our media, by our president, who got out there and spread the propaganda, the ugly propaganda that came out the first day on October 7th. All of a sudden we're hearing about dead babies. Well, guess what? Most of the atrocities that they were accused of did not happen. If you want to know that that's a fact, go and read the Israeli newspaper Haaretz. They've had to walk back several things that didn't happen. CNN has walked them back. There's been several other news medias that have had to walk back their comments. Joe Biden had to have his comments about seeing pictures of dead babies walk back. This is what this slaughter is predicated on, just like we did in Iraq. Just like we did in Iraq. And I'll tell you something about the Palestinians. They welcomed Jewish people there, and they lived side by side, and they lived peaceably, and they were neighbors, and they babysat each other's kids until a few Zionist Jews got together and decided they wanted it all. And really, if you want a long and short of what's happened there, Israel was greedy. They wanted every bit of it, and they wanted it pure. And they wanted the Arabs gone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Councilmember Schaefer mentioned the zoning that was done in the 50s and 60s with parking lots and car-centric suburbs as being a bad zoning of the past. I'd like to point out that that's what they thought was good then. And we don't know what people are going to think 50 or 60 or 70 years from now about what we're doing now. In the vision statement, we talk about looking several generations in the future. In the future, people will say, why didn't those people have rooftop gardens in those buildings in Gateway? Why didn't they have food production and green walls? We don't know what they're going to say, but we'll do the best we can. In terms of not or avoiding driving, the in-lieu park fees should be used for local parks, not to parks that people will be driving their cars to, or for improvements to people, parks that are a mile or 2 miles away. As has been said, homeownership can happen. It takes a lot of work and innovation. The callers mentioned a variety of policies that need improvement. I'll point out that, such as the 300-foot length of streets, this was brought up at the Planning Commission, but among those things, it slipped through the cracks. It's mentioned 4 times. It'll be fixed, but there's dozens of things that slip through the cracks and are not in these plans that we're going to have to attend to. It was said that there's not substantive changes, only policies. I disagree. There are substantive changes in the general plan. Melody of Rocker made her comments. I'd say that there's been an expectation among many people in our community that taller densing buildings are going to result in lower rents. I think that this is not likely to happen. I think it's an assumption. Unfortunately, it's not likely to happen. I mentioned this before. I predict that there's going to be lots of sales of homes in Arcata that are used as rentals now, and there's going to be fewer rental homes available to people as people in my age range age out and we want to sell our homes. I think that there's going to be as many homes, as many rentals removed from the market as will be building, and it's going to be a problem of a different kind. These houses will be sold, but not at affordable prices. Thanks very much for all your work.
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you guys for hearing our comments. My name is Sean. I'm happy to be here and addressing you guys. Thank you so much for your time. So again, I want to ask you guys to add the ceasefire resolution to the next agenda of this meeting during the week that there will be Martin Luther King Day. This resolution actually does have a quote from Martin Luther King. It says, "Oppressed people cannot remain oppressed forever. The yearning for freedom eventually manifests itself." So I hope that you will definitely consider putting it on the agenda for this next time. The most important thing on this proposed resolution, is that it says, "Therefore be it resolved, the City of Arcata formally demands Congress and the U.S. President to take urgent action to enact an immediate ceasefire in the Gaza Strip." That's the most important. It also has further be it resolved that the City of Arcata calls for the unrestricted supply of food, water, fuel, and medicine into the Gaza Strip. Further be it resolved that the City of Arcata demand the U.S. President to resume negotiation for the release of all hostages, both Israeli and Palestinian. Now, many Palestinian prisoners are still held by Israel, and this needs to stop. Israel has no right to seize these prisoners, to seize these people. No right to impose a blockade around Gaza. This is an occupation, a brutal occupation, and right now we're seeing a genocide. We're seeing a Holocaust. Holocaust. The Oxford language defines Holocaust: destruction or slaughter on a mass scale. destruction or slaughter on a mass scale. That's what we're witnessing right now, a Holocaust. A Holocaust. We need to not be silent. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. That must not be our creed here in Arcata. We must speak the evil that we see. We must call it out. We must address this. Many voters feel the same way, that this ceasefire must happen. And if there's so many reasons why. It's obviously it's been voted on before. But a lot has changed since it was voted on. The ceasefire was voted down, the resolution 2 months ago. Well, in the last 2 months, it's gotten way worse. UN has reported that 85% of the population of Gaza has been displaced. We're talking about escalating communication.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello, I'm really grateful to be out here. Definitely to hear about the new base plan that's been going on. But mostly the reason why I'm out here is to support the new resolution for a ceasefire. And I hope that it gets adopted and that you pass it in support for a ceasefire. But that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Joanne McGarry, and I am also in favor of the council considering at the next meeting putting the resolution for a ceasefire on the agenda. As time has passed, worse things have become a reality. And I was in Barnes Pharmacy today, and a mother and a young boy who's probably about 10, we got into a brief discussion, and she says, we're talking about this in my family. So it's not something that the cities, the people in the city of Arcata are not paying attention to. And the history of so much of this, and Alex, you weren't at the last 3 city council meetings before the last one last year. And I was surprised you didn't weigh in on the resolution from afar, because you know the history of what this community has done in the past on important resolutions on a global scale. We've put ourselves on the map for being outspoken on this. I have a brother who does Holocaust studies in Catholic schools in the Bay Area, and he's created a foundation, the Helen and Joe Farkas Center, and one of his outreach things is to talk about the rescuers as opposed to the bystanders of the Holocaust. The bystanders. I am so afraid of not wanting to be a bystander personally, and I would hope that the people in the community here do not want to be a bystander and watch the starvation, the bombing, the mutilation, the deaths, the orphaning, the maiming, the harm, the great harm to a population of people who can't go anywhere and we cannot get to them. A ceasefire now is so, so important. And I want to read a passage from Sam's book here, The Altruistic Personality. By comparing and contrasting rescuers and bystanders, Sam and Pearl Oliner discovered that those who intervened were distinguished by certain common characteristics, including a deep-seated, wide-ranging empathy to others developed in their childhood homes, where moral and ethical values were not only strongly held, but acted upon by their own parents. These findings dispel popular perceptions of moral heroism as lone acts of spontaneous courage, for they demonstrate that many rescuers were influenced by the standards of behavior set by others within their social circle. This is a social circle here in the city of Arcata. We need a ceasefire resolution coming from the heart and soul of the people here. The hearts and minds are saying we cannot allow this to happen in 2024.
Thank you, Joanne. Any more public comment in person? All right, let's go to Zoom.
All right, our first one is Raylina and Adam.
Hi, all. I wanted to just bring forward a request to explore more ways that we could expand recycling within the city. I know that the cities within Humboldt County often rely on one another to try out programs, and there's a lot of forward movement within Arcata to that I think would help facilitate something to expand a recycling program. So rather than just having recycling and trash and compost, expand that out to delineate bins for glass, for aluminum, and something that I think might be a little bit more forward thinking, electronics, specifically vapes. A lot of important materials that are just being put into our waste systems that could, there's a lot of important things in there. Also, I would just like to echo what other people are commenting on the ceasefire in Gaza. I think it's an important topic to address, even if it is symbolic for our small town. And just to everyone who has commented on the ceasefire in Gaza, I hope that this isn't the only opportunity that you use to participate in public comment. There's a lot of good that can be done with this public discord. And even though it is an atrocity, it is a large topic in our global conversation, I hope it's just not the only opportunity that you take to participate in this public comment forum. Anyways, so just to reiterate, if there are recycling programs that are in place for different materials, I think that we should put a little bit more effort into marketing those to the community more. And that's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Raylina.
All right, our next one is Ellen P. Go ahead, Ellen. Ellen, can you hear? There you go.
There I go. Hi, thank you. I'm an Arcata community member, and I support adding the Redwood Peace and Justice Center's resolution for a ceasefire to the next Arcata City Council meeting. I've read the resolution, and it's clear that the center has approached this issue with care and a wish for peace for all. And I appreciate the opportunity this presents for community members to speak to the council again about Palestine. I would like to point out that the call for a ceasefire is a bare minimum first step towards the liberation of Palestine, and that simply returning to the conditions present in Palestine prior to October 7th, 2023 would be woefully insufficient. I ask the council and community members to look to the resolution for the liberation of Palestine, shared by Humboldt for Palestine, which outlines a path towards an end to the occupation of Palestine by the settler state of Israel. This resolution was written by and in collaboration with Palestinians, a necessary condition for any true freedom in Palestine. You may remember that Arcata residents asked the City Council to consider this resolution months ago, and the council members refused to do so. Not only that, folks speaking in favor of the resolution were threatened with police violence by racist Zionists also in attendance, and the council's own legal representative immediately responded to this by wielding the weapon of so-called decorum, not to quiet the Zionists shouting out in the chamber, but to intimidate our community members who were being threatened, both during the meeting and in a face-to-face confrontation after the meeting. So, while I do take the time tonight to urge the council to reconsider their stance, and I hope that changes in how the council responds to public comment have been implemented since then, I frankly have no expectation that the council members will suddenly find their moral compass and stand on the right side of history. I hope to be proven wrong, because not only have several other cities in California and across the country adopted similar resolutions, so many people in our community see themselves in the Palestinian struggle, and we want to know that our elected leaders stand with us. Because we know from lived experience and from history that there is no one more dangerous than the one who stays silent in the presence of evil and injustice. As a parent, how can I know that my child is safe in this community if my local leaders refuse to speak out against the murder of Palestinian children, that is underway with the full support of our federal government. I challenge you to show us unequivocally that Arcata stands for truth, justice, freedom, and peace. Have the courage to call for the liberation of Palestine. Tell us that you will fight with us for a more just and equitable world and community. Or at the very least, agree to discuss the matter in public and tell us exactly where you stand so we can move forward accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Margarita. Go ahead.
Hello.
We can hear you.
All I can really say is that I feel like everything that needs to be said is said.
Great.
The gravity of the situation is felt already.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sherry. Go ahead, Sherry.
Good evening, City Council. I would ask the persons who continue to take the time of the City Council, staff, and residents of Arcata in these meetings, take your ceasefire declaration request to Hamas. Ask them why they didn't approve the permanent ceasefire proposal put forth by Egypt last week that would have granted them an independent state. Ask them why they have declined their own state on at least 5 occasions since the fall of the Ottoman Empire after World War I. The British Peel Commission in 1937, the UN Partition Plan of 1947, Yasser Arafat rejected Egypt's peace treaty with Israel in 1979, could have gotten in on that. The Oslo Accords in the 90s, when Israel vacated Gaza in 2007, another proposal in 2019, and up to last week's proposal. It boggles the mind that people carry water for Hamas, the organization that deprives their own people of humanitarian aid, food, and water, so they can build terror tunnels that open into hospitals, mosques, and elementary schools. The leaders of Hamas are billionaires. Their ill-gotten gains received from your humanitarian donation dollars and from Iran. Hamas's stated goal is the eradication of the Jewish state. Hamas doesn't want a ceasefire. Hamas doesn't want an independent Palestinian state. They don't want to coexist with Israel or with the West. Considering this, it is not appropriate for the city of Arcata to spend any more time on this resolution that is offensive to our Jewish residents. I would like to thank the City Council for not agendizing the Hamas ceasefire resolution proposal again. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you, Sherry.
All right, our next speaker is Fox. Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Great. I am calling in to voice my support for the new ceasefire resolution. I would also like to I'm so sorry. I'm kind of overcome with a lot of grief right now and feeling very emotional about this issue. But I believe it is so necessary to use our voices, especially to stop all civilian death. I'm sorry. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next speaker is Adam. Go ahead, Adam.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to wait. Hold on, we got some feedback going. I just wanted to say that if there's any way that we can find a way to prioritize really getting more property into the community trust fund or the community land trust, as we develop large apartment buildings, if we can somehow find a way to really appeal to some of our older citizens who have done very well and potentially own many multiple family homes, to really endear ourselves to them as a community that really loves one another, to find a way to bequest those homes to the city for the purpose of being non-market housing, I think that would be really, really incredible. Yeah, allocating land for the funds would be just incredible. And I also wanted to say that I think it's really important that Arcata, as historically a little hippie peacenik town, should be able to say, yeah, a ceasefire resolution, even if it's only symbolic, is an important small step. The fact that I have friends who have not heard from their family in 2 months, and they're pretty certain that basically all of their baby cousins are dead. That's not insignificant, and calling for a ceasefire, I think, is not that big a step, even if it's symbolic only. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
All right, our next speaker is, and our last speaker is Kate B. Go ahead.
Good evening. I really appreciate. It's just so hard to not be emotional about this shit. I want to thank Joan. I want to thank all the people that have spoken up about what's going on. I am absolutely about agendizing the resolution that Humble for Palestine has outlined. It's very thorough. And yes, a ceasefire is the very beginning, because even before this, there was no peace for the Palestinian people. This affects all of us. It's genocide. It's not radical to be human, to care about people. That is all.
Thank you, Kate. Anybody else on Zoom, Karen?
Nope.
All right. Thank you. Let's move on to council and staff reports. Staff, do you have any reports?
Nothing else to report tonight.
All right. Then we'll start with Sarah.
All right. Before I go into my planned update, I just want to say I supported a ceasefire resolution back in November. I support it now. If anybody wants to work on it with me, let me know. And if you would like a copy of what I said during that meeting, because people said we deserve to know how our council members feel about it, I let you all know how I feel about it, and you can go back and watch that meeting, or you can ask me for what I said, and I will send it to you. I'm happy to. And I will continue, doing what I'm doing behind the scenes and via social media to, try to do what we can as we continue to watch the United States throw around their power in the Security Council to prevent the UN from doing what they're supposed to do. So thank you, those who spoke tonight. Rapid change of subject. We are now in January, the time that we are all looking forward to, where PG&E has significantly raised rates. We had a really great presentation from one of our CEA staff members just about everything that's going on with that. The bottom line is, obviously PG&E needs to pay their shareholders, but some of the drivers of the increase, which I just do think it's important to recognize these things, but having to do with wildfire mitigation, undergrounding of power lines to prevent future wildfire issues, planning for power safety shutoffs and vegetation management, and then also working on CO2 reduction and retirement of gas pipelines and upgrading that grid capacity to support things like all electric ordinances and things that we want to move forward with and see, but our electric grid can't necessarily handle right now. And that's really, especially the PG&E side of things with transmission and distribution of power. And then kind of on the generation side and those rate increases too, just the volatility and like the high market prices of energy right now are insane, and the ups and the downs, and being able to compensate for that and pick, rates that are going to actually be reflective of what that demand is one of the reasons. And so I have recently gotten involved and interested in looking at CPUC hearings. And so if you're interested in the California Public Utilities Commission and who is on that commission, because let me tell you, they're all former board members of PG&E and Edison, and it's kind of wild. And so we talked a bit at that meeting too about like the future of energy independence in this area. I know all of us, I think, when we went to that conference last year, had opportunity to talk to people from SMUD, which is the Sacramento Municipal Utilities District, and they are incredible, and they are totally public-owned utility. They have the lowest rates in the state. They are efficient. They are doing amazing grid upgrades and projects and resiliency projects, and it's, you know, a ways off, but I think something that, like, with momentum and hope and movement in this county that, you know, maybe someday we could see. And so they kind of told us the bottom line. I mean, customers can really expect to see increases between 11 and 24% on their bills. And that's going to be higher in the period from January to July, and then it will drop a bit after that. But yeah, we're looking at some higher rates, so brace for impact. Sorry. And that's all I have, I think, from our CEA. So it was a good year, and we're moving into the new year.
Thank you, Sarah.
On a lighter note, a couple of updates from, no, it's where we are. It's where we are. A couple of updates from the Chamber of Commerce. There is a mixer tomorrow night from 5:30 to 7 at the basement, which is in the bottom of the Jacoby Storehouse. And there'll actually be some music after the mixer, I believe. And then at the end of the month, on January 25th, we will present the State of the City at the Minor Theater, and that's done every year, and it's a collaboration. There will be people from representing the city, the chamber, and Cal Poly there, just to give updates on where we all are. And that's what I have for tonight.
Oh, sorry. Would you, the State of the City, would you retell me again the date, please? I'm sorry.
Sure. It's January 25th. 10, and I don't know that I said the time. It's from 10:30 to 12:30.
And do we have a location?
The Minor Theater.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, I just want to remind everybody that there are a lot of committees that have vacancies right now, most particularly the Economic Development Committee only has 4 members, and they have not been able to have a quorum for like 3 months. So I know there's other committees that are also needing people to serve on them. It's a wonderful thing. I know that people have opinions about things. They want to contribute. Joining a committee is a really great way to be part of the government process. The Planning Commission also has 2 vacancies, and you can get applications for those too. So do some community service. Thank you.
Okay, so, all right. So I have a couple of things I wanted to ask. One is, we heard about recycling and garbage. And it is true that we have 2 large pickups in our area. You know, if you have garbage service, you can call and you can have 2 large pickups. It's your mattress, your box spring, or whatever, or your couch, which I see here and there around town. I would really like to see how we could let the the realtors and the rental companies inform their tenants of this, so that we just don't find these on the streets of Arcata. So that's one thing I've been thinking about. And another is, I wanted to mention to everyone that the Chamber of Commerce is going to be having their annual dinner on February 24th at the Community Center. And I wanted to thank them very much for the wonderful job for the holiday decorations that we had on the plaza this year. And I think they did a fantastic job, and they have done amazing things about accepting Main Street within their boundaries or within their organization, and pulling off a lot of things that Main Street did. Another item is, I saw that Mike Wilson had posted, he represents us on the Coastal Commission, that they'd had a presentation on housing along the coastline of California. And one of the presentations was about short stay rentals and the effect that it has on housing. And the professor that did that, he's from Quebec and Montreal, and he said he did a survey in Los Angeles that showed the short stay rentals, the number of people it's caused for homelessness. And we happen to have, his recommendation is not to have short stay rentals that are separate. You could have them inclusive in your house if you wanted to rent out a portion of your house or something of that nature. You're not displacing people by having short stay rentals. And that wasn't something I really thought about. I've been thinking about that. You know, I used to have short stay rentals. I stopped it over maybe 10 years ago, and they're full-time rentals now. And I think it's something we should look into and readdress. Also, I wanted to mention that Kuna, is having, they had a great time with the Santa Wonderland or whatever. It's, Kuna has everything on their Facebook page and on their website. So they have a cleanup that's coming up on Sunday from 9 to 4, which they have annually and monthly. It happens all the time. They also have, they're going to be having their January 11th meeting, and that is also, the information on that for the Zoom meeting is on their website and Facebook. And so if you want to get really involved in what's going on in Valley West, I suggest you really get into the Kuna page and find out what's happening. So they will be doing brainstorming, residents, one thing and another, what's happening in Valley West. We have a lot going on in Valley West, and we have a new developments going in right now for market rate housing, and I think we'll probably see that finished by next fall, and that'll be good to have more housing available for us. So those are the things I'm covering. Did I cover everything for you? Okay.
Thanks, Alex. You done?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right.
So since our last city council meeting, I don't have a lot to report. Most of what I would have shared would have been the various chamber happenings, being on the city liaison. But I will say that I am super excited about the new loft apartments in Valley West, and also want to bring to the table that now that we have a new police chief, I wanted to bring folks' attention to the public, that the Public Safety Committee needs new members. And then finally, getting into the holiday spirit, our space held a holiday event, which fed the unhoused and also added some holiday activities to include cookie decorating. That's all I have. Thanks.
All right, thank you. And with that, we can adjourn. Thank you very much. Have a great day.